We are now live on YouTube.
Okay, good evening. Welcome to Skegness Town Council Management Committee meeting on Wednesday, the 21st of March, 7 p.m. via Zoom video conference. Agenda item number 1, the minutes of the last meeting. They're attached. To approve otherwise the minutes of the meeting, the Management Committee held on Wednesday, the 31st of March, 2021. It's pages 19, 20, 21, 22. Councillor Billy Brooks.
I'll propose them, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton.
I'll second those.
Thank you. All in favour, please show. We got those, Town Clerk.
We have 10 votes, yeah, so that's a majority of those here.
Once again, I apologise. You all move around on my screen. Agenda item number 2, to note apologies received by the Town Clerk prior to the meeting. Town Clerk, please.
Mayor, we have apologies from councillors Anderson, Barry and Saxon, and we've also got apologies that they're going to be late from councillors Cunnington and Dennis.
Okay, thank you. And we are aware, I think, of a few technical issues of the link working, so we might see some more still come through. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, to receive declarations of interest. Declarations, Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a note that I will be leaving the meeting before the planning comes on, item 8.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, I'm on planning at East Lindsey, so I'll be leaving before then on item 8.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edgington. Councillor Edgington, you got your microphone turned off still.
Unlike the 2 previous speakers, I should be leaving after item 7 because I'm a member of the LDC planning.
Thank you, Councillor Edgington. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's whether I have to, I'll ask Steve this one, whether I have to declare an interest with the report on the CAF manager vacancy for a similar business in Skegness.
Town Clerk.
I would suggest you might want to perhaps go into the waiting room for that item.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
In that case, Mr. Mayor, I'd best do the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4, governance report, quarter 4, report and appendices attached to include provisions of income and expenditure on the balance sheet, bank reconciliations, risk register and outstanding actions.
And I'll go through it in the usual way. This is obviously the end of year situation. There are potentially still a few adjustments that we need to make to the accounts before they come to council for final approval in the annual return. And by that stage, they'll also have been through the internal audit process. But these are, pretty much where they're going to be. Now, in Appendix A, you have the income and expenditure and balance sheet for the year and the end of year position. I've set out in items in item 2 all of the points below item 2 through to 2.4. All of the information relating to the end of year positions. I can answer any questions on those. I will draw your attention to item 2.2.13, because I'm going to refer to this a bit later on in the report when we get to the services section. That this is specifically around the cemetery income. As you know, before Christmas, we were looking as if we were going to be well below the budgeted income, but since Christmas, the team have been exceptionally busy with funerals. It's not clear whether it's an impact of COVID or not. I suspect there might be some of that within there, but it has, as well as putting a lot of pressure on the team, it has meant that the financial position on the cemetery has completely turned around. And in fact, there's now £8,500 more than we budgeted at the beginning of the year. And with other circumstances that are going on, I want to refer back to that, and also the budget that we set for next year. So I'll come back to that one. But if anybody's got any questions on any of the items in Appendix A, then please ask, and I will do my best to answer your questions.
Okay, do we have any questions? Councillor Simon Claxton.
While I'm going through this expenditure, we go down to subscriptions for your. I don't understand. How come we're so far out on the budget for the clerk?
Right, subscriptions, there were a couple of things in there. One is that when we took out the PRS and PPL licenses at the beginning of the year, they were much more expensive than we anticipated for the Pavilion and Tower Gardens. Now, we're in negotiation with them at the moment, because obviously a big period of that was lockdown. But they're not the easiest organisation to, let's say, negotiate with. They have very rigid sort of rules and regulations, and it's difficult to get around that. So that was one of the reasons. Another reason was that the Lauk subscription was about £200 more than we thought it would be at the beginning of the year, because obviously it doesn't come out. They don't actually set their charges until after we've set our budget for the year. And we also had our Zoom fees in there as well.
Yeah. Thank you for answering that. My second one is electricity. How come we've gone so far over that budget? That's astronomically, mentally crazy how much we've spent on electricity. Outside of the budget, I mean. This is on page 3.
Right, okay, yes, indeed. The answer is at this stage we don't know. I mean, we can speculate as to why that might be, and we are currently doing some investigations around that. So most of this is both Tower Gardens and also the building, and we were in fact talking about this morning in the climate change meeting. Now, some of that is to do with electricity in the gardens itself and the pumps, which appear to be using a lot more electricity than we anticipated. But also the building itself appears to have used a lot more electricity than we were planning and were led to believe, based on the original sort of figures that were provided by the engineers that designed the system. Now, why that is, I don't know at this point in time. but we are investigating. We will find that out. It could be, for example, that during a good part of the year, we had to have the doors open for the cafe. And this went on obviously into October, end of October. And the heating would have been trying to heat the building at the same time as cold air was coming in from the outside. That's one possible issue. But we also want to check out the actual meter itself and see whether it is working correctly, because I absolutely agree that the figures here seem to be a lot higher than we would anticipate for the equipment that we have in the building. And we're trying to engage back with the original suppliers to see, to make sure we've got a good understanding of the outputs and usage figures for all of the pieces of equipment that we have.
I mean, we haven't been there for, the building hasn't been used for the large part because of shutdown, because of COVID, isn't it?
Well, the heating, which is an underfloor heating system, has been on, albeit the thermostats have been turned back because it has been partially occupied by staff in the mornings. We've obviously had to heat the building, and the way the building works, you can't just turn on the heat and turn it off. It doesn't work like that. You have to heat it sort of like days in advance, and it works on the basis that the concrete floor actually reaches a temperature, and then the underfloor heating just sustains that through the heat source pump. Heat source pumps work at a very low temperature compared with normal central heating, so the water that runs through them is not much more than hand hot, but it relies on heating a large concrete slab to keep that heat. So yeah, I would expect the heating costs to be much lower than they are, but as yet we're not in a position to say exactly what's gone on, but we are investigating it, and we have been talking about that, well, as I say, earlier today in our working group meeting, but Deputy Town Clerk and I have been talking about it for some time since we got the figures. We were also, because it was an initial tariff we were on, because we didn't own a building of this type before, the initial tariff from the providers was much higher, so that would again be a slight it would make a difference. And when that tariff runs out in a few months' time, we will be changing that over to a much lower tariff, and therefore even if the consumption is higher, we would expect to see a reduction in those charges.
Sorry, whose tariff are you waiting to run out?
The energy company's tariff, because we had to sign up for a fixed term at the beginning in order, because we hadn't held an account for a property like this of this size before. Right. It all went through the town hall before, which was owned by East Lindsey.
Do I have to make a request for you to keep us updated on this, or will it come back at next council meeting?
No, I will update you. Yeah, I will update you. I mean, as I say, from this morning's meeting, there will be some issues in that coming out. So yeah, we'll keep. I will keep council updated with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got a few questions. The closing stock at 1,500, how much of that was actually waste or thrown away, or is it usable? My other question is, you've got down that the rents were collected. Have all rents been collected for this year as well and last year? I think that's my final question. And have we got actually a figure for the electrical cost at all?
I'm sorry, the figures in the documents in front of you.
Right, yes, sorry, I've got that. I see it now. No worries, thank you.
in response to your query about the cafe stock, I mean, we will be coming on to Cafe Dansent in a minute, but the cafe stock, there has been waste because of expiry dates during the lockdown period. So a lot of the stuff that was in the freezers has now expired. We have still got tinned stock, and also things like stocks of usable materials such as, paper takeaway type containers and those sorts of things, which are a part of the stock figures. Whether or not there may well need to be another disposal prior to us opening again in May, but the stock figure you see was taken on the 31st of March. So that was what was still viable stock at that point in time.
Also, have all the rents been collected for this year and last year?
All the rents were collected for 2021. The rents for 21-22 aren't yet fully due. They'll be collected through the year.
Okay, and also just regarding the underfloor heating, I had the same sort of similar problem at my house. The electric was about 3 times higher than it should have been due to my settings on the underfloor heating, and it's a bit of a nightmare to get it sorted. Well, good luck.
Yes, I mean, it is something, as I say, that we're looking at and we're taking advice on.
Thank you. Councillor Adrian Finlay.
Yeah, for those that have an agenda, it's 6.3, the Lumley Road baskets. It says that at some stage it's planned for June. They're going to return in June, but it also says here that this depends on resources. I'm quite concerned the fact that it says depends on resources. We've got visitors coming back to the town. Hopefully Steve Kirk, if he's listening, will be able to confirm if we are definitely getting them new bins down Lumley Road. And I think presenting Lumley Road at its finest or as best we can, bearing in mind that there is a few empty units down there. I think the hanging baskets is a key part of presentation, to welcome visitors back. So I'm just a little bit concerned that it says depends on resources. And the other question I had was above it in 6.2 was that the play park has a broken piece of equipment. And I was just concerned, obviously, what happened in the Tower Gardens with a broken piece of equipment, how long it took to get fixed and how much it's going to cost and if the money's been sorted out for it. Thank you.
Can I come back to that when we get to section 6? I wanted to close off section 2 of the report first on the finances, and then I'll pick up those questions when we get to the section 6, if that's okay.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question with regards to the food that had to be chucked away. Is there any food, that's coming close to the use by or whatever it is that like donated to, I don't know, the food bank, or is something done with it rather than just chucking it in the bin after it's gone past its date?
Yes, we did donate some to the food charity. The food clearly depends on what it is and whether it's used by, sell by, or best before dates. But those things that could be given to the food store have.
Councillor Claxton, did you leave your hand up from last time?
Oh no, I've got another question.
Okay.
Town Clerk, another one for Tower Gardens, Park and Buildings and your finances. The two, we've got 4402 and 4403, building repairs and ground repairs. What building repairs did we have to have done on a near brand new building that we haven't occupied nearly? And ground repairs, both of them have gone well over budget. Can you explain for me, please?
Well, you'll see that it's building repairs and maintenance. And maintenance includes service contracts. So we have to have various equipment in the building service. So things, well, apart from things like obviously gas boilers and electrics, and the doors have to be serviced. The screen that is between, we have, even though they haven't been used, we have got a certain amount of legal obligation to have those checks. The thermostatic valves on the hot water taps. There is a long list of things. We've had to have the gutters cleaned out. It's a question you might think, well, why don't we do it? Well, we have to be certified to go up on the roof, etc., etc. So there are, you know, a number of things that come into that mean that we've got to spend. I'm just trying to find if I've got some more detail here behind it.
We shouldn't be going over budget from servicing, because we know what needs to be serviced. I know there's other things, I know you said that, but if you know the things that we need to be serviced, we shouldn't be going over budget, because you know what the cost is going to be. You know what needs to be serviced. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but when we set the budget, we didn't necessarily know that. And what I would draw your attention to is that over the whole budget itself, it was pretty close. I mean, we overestimated the rates. Bear in mind, when these figures were put in, we didn't have a building. We built it during the course of the year. We then we carried those budgets forward. We hadn't occupied it. We carried those budgets forward into the following year. And that's what we have. We're now in the reality, in the overall position, it's very close, actually. The total for the gardens and park are very close. Now, what I can tell you, the building repairs and maintenance included £1,900 worth of electrical works to the annex building, which was the old existing building that is still there, that's used by our gardeners. So that's been lumped in with the pavilion costs, even though it's not actually part of the pavilion. The electrics in there had been ripped out, so we had to have those reinstated, and it was reported and approved by council. There was £4,583 of electrical works in the park. If you recall, we had several lamp columns that were defective. We had a situation where the pumps and the bandstand were tripping out regularly, so we had to have those circuits all reviewed and renewed in some cases. So there alone, you've got £6,400 of expenditure that we didn't expect.
So next year, these figures should be substantially lower then.
Hopefully, unless we get any other problems that we're not aware of. What I would say is that I can't remember off the top of my head what figures we've put in. I think we adjusted the maintenance figures for next year's budget to reflect the true cost of maintenance, now that we have a better idea of what it's costing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kerr. Got your microphone on, turned off, Councillor Kerr.
I'll turn it on then. How about that? Right, yeah, take on board what the town clerk is saying about a lot of these things, certainly within the parks and gardens maintenance were guesstimates. Runs in a little variance of approximately 6.5–7%, so we're not a million miles away, but I just want this council to be mindful that we do need to keep a close eye on these, because of course these will become huge cost pressures into next year's budget. You know, if we're trying to keep the budget as low as possible, even 6 or 7% on this building will make a huge impact on where we are when we're setting precepts. So, you know, it's quite close, but I just think it's not a bad starting point. I think the Clark and his team did well to get those figures together in the first place. But in saying that, had the rates not come out £14,000 under, we'd now be looking at £16,000 of excess expenditure. So, you know, I just think it's quite right that we are mindful of these figures, because it is the budget that will be affected at the end of the year.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, can I just interrupt? Sid said, could you call him, Kate? He's tried lots of ways to get in and he can't get in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edgington.
I've got the same message from Councillor Dennis, I'm afraid. There you go.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question, Town Clerk, relating the gas 4062? Is that from our existing building, or do we have gas in the new building? Is it an existing bill from when we moved?
We've got gas in the new building to heat the hot water, because heat source pumps don't heat the water to a hot enough temperature for the purposes of like hygiene. So we've got kitchen, we've got a cleaners thing, and they need to be at a higher temperature than can be achieved by heat source pumps. So it's a small, it's sort of a domestic sized boiler, and it has a small tank with it, and it operates on demand from that small tank. So as you use it, it keeps a small amount ready and available to be deployed.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just wasn't aware of the building having gas when we had a walk round, so that's the only question. I thought it might be from the old town hall or something. Thank you for that. Any other questions?
Shall I move on to the next section?
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, we've talked there about we have already addressed some of the issues with the cafe anyway, but clearly we had COVID, which meant that the performance of the cafe and hall was majorly interrupted. And when we didn't start in the cafe until second week of July, and then we then stopped again in the end of October. So we were only open for a short period. And similarly there with the hall, we had a good start with that, and then we hit lockdown again and had to stop. And a lot of the organisations, even those that perhaps could have continued for a little while, that they were stopping as well. So a big disruption there. Overall, the management accounts, and this is where you need to bear in mind that in here we've tried to present this as a bit like a profit and loss account, but in the accounts in the that go to the auditors are going to be in a slightly different, reflecting slightly different amounts because of the basis on which we have to account. So all the figures are the same, but they're presented in a slightly different way. So overall, it seems like we've made a small loss. But what I would say is, if the cafe and the hall wasn't open, the council would have still incurred those costs, because it would have still had to pay the rates on, because it's part of the building. It would have just been. It's not separable in that sense. So it would have still paid that. It would have still paid for the heating costs and lighting costs and all of the associated overheads that go with the building, that some of which have been shared out here to the cafe. So it's very difficult to draw too much from this. We got some grant funding towards the end of the year, which was good because that helped us. And similarly, we weren't paying staff costs at the end of the year because the staff in the cafe were able to be furloughed, apart from where we had to bring the manager back for stock take, and also where we had to pay some costs that had time that had been incurred before they were moved into furlough. So overall, is there any questions on that? I mean, staff are still furloughed. Office staff are carrying out the sort of general fridge checks and that, although, as I say, there's not very much in them at the moment, but we're just mindful of doing that on a regular basis, just for those bits and pieces that are left.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just a couple of questions on this. I'm sure you've explained this once before, but I just need my memory refreshing. How are you apportioning the costs over the cafe and the hall compared with the office? Are you just doing it on a floor area basis? Not a usage basis. Okay, thank you very much. And would it be possible to have a breakdown of turnover from hall income and cafe income?
Yes, that is the cafe. The accounts that are set out there are the cafe ones. The hall takings are £1,353 last year, against a budget of 1,250. So and that actually shows the popularity at the get-go we had with the building. It did much better than we anticipated that it would, but obviously we had to then shut down again. Otherwise, we would have made quite a considerable amount in excess of the budget. We're already getting inquiries for the coming year, so hopefully that will be reflected again next year.
Personally, I don't know about other councils, but I would like those figures to be drawn out and in a separate document, so we can actually have, because I'm assuming when we look at the electricity and gas and waste disposal costs, is that purely for the cafe then, not for the hall?
No, it's all apportioned costs. Yeah, that doesn't include, that is just for the cafe, so it doesn't include anything for the hall in there, because the hall is essentially there and is being heated whether we have one group in there or 50 groups in there.
That's my point, Steve. I would like to see if you could do it, a similar sort of document produced, a set of basic profit loss figures produced just for the hall. So,
okay, we'll certainly have a go at that. Yeah,
because it would be nice, because we not this council, but the previous council thought, a hall would be a huge asset for the town and would make some money for the council as well. It would be nice if to either prove that or otherwise with some figures.
Okay, we can look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Claxton.
Hello, yeah, just going through the bank statements as well. On the 19th of March, we've got something from Purple Zebra. It's cost £502.20. What was that for? I'm guessing it's a promotional company, but.
Well, the bank statements are reflecting, what has already been has gone through, rather than, it's not a payment sheet. I'm just trying to remember who Purple's are. The Deputy Town Clerk knows who the Purple Zebra are.
Okay, please.
Purple Zebra are the company that provide us with the awards for any honoured citizens, and also for any mayor awards. So that's for the awards.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No.
I'll move on to section 4 then.
Thank you.
So section 4 is risk management. We did this not that long ago. I mean, there are one or two changes that have been highlighted on there, but I can just take any questions on that. I don't think I need to go through it in immense detail because we considered it only in February, I think it was.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak? No. Do you have your recommendations in front of you there?
Mayor, can I just go on to the other sections now? Because I need to answer
Yes, Councillor
as well. So section 5 is the outstanding actions list. So again, if there's any questions on those, I can take them. If not, I'll move on to section 6.
No, I think the Deputy Town Clerk left her hand up from last time. I just lifted my head up from there. No, carry on, please, Town Clerk.
Right, I'll move on to the operational report. So we're ordering flowers for the boulevard and also the ones that were approved by council last time. Play parks. We've removed the fly tipping. There is a cost to that, unfortunately. Broken pieces of equipment. We've actually got broken pieces of equipment in all of them at the moment, which is frustrating. But you know, we are arranging for those to be repaired. The difficulty we have in this area is that there is only really one qualified play fitter for the area, and all of the play company equipment providers use that one person. So things tend to get a little bit delayed. It doesn't really matter which company we go to buy the replacement equipment from, it all comes back to the same bottleneck. So we're chasing that up and hope to get that done as soon as possible. We've also had reported that there's some problems with the skate ramps at Winthorpe. The fencing on that needs some repair and maintenance, which again we'll be looking at, but we'll probably do that in-house rather than get a company in to do it. The Lumley Road baskets, yeah, resources I'll come on to in 6.51 cemetery and refer back to what I was talking about early on. We have got a resources problem in that we're down one person in the cemetery team. Now the cemetery team usually also look after the plants on Castleton Boulevard and Lumley Avenue. We've also had extra work caused by the funerals. Council at its last budget setting drastically reduced the overtime budget that's available to me. We've only got £800 now in that overtime budget, and that is going to be spent by the end of April. So we're going to have no more overtime available. And so resource wise, we're going to really struggle because we're behind where we should be because of having one less member of staff, albeit some of those hours, some hours have been covered on overtime by a part-time member of staff. But we're in a situation where we're really struggling to catch up in any way, but then also we've got summer jobs coming on which are over and above you know, what we would normally have, and as yet we haven't seen a dip in the number of funerals coming through, so that's a bit concerning. So given that the cemetery figures were that much better than we had anticipated, and that we've actually got an extra £8,500 worth of income in this current year. That 8,500 will actually go into the general reserve at the end of the year. What I'm asking here is, can we put that money back into overtime so that I can continue to fund the extra work that we need to keep things going? So without that, I'm going to have to stop the overtime for a member of staff who is helping to cover the cemetery. And it also means that the normal overtime that would have been available to water early in the morning the plants and deal with them when there isn't the crowds around, that's also going to go by the wayside. So it would be very helpful if that money that has already been earned can be put back into that overtime budget. I know that council was struggling to balance the books when setting the budget, but at that point in time, it looked like we were going to be under, the income was going to be under budget, not over. On allotments, there has been fly tipping again, which has been removed, but it's a continuing problem. And then there's nothing to report yet on parish paths. The grass cutting team are reporting a bit of an upsurge in littering on the grass. So it's taking them a bit longer to get round because they're having to pick more before they can cut. The office is now reopened and people have started to come in to pay their allotments and for inquiries and things like that. And as I've reported there, we had a picnic bench vandalised. So any questions on those operational issues before I move finally on to the last sections?
Councillor Jimmy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just regarding the picnic bench, has it been repaired or removed or anything like that? Thank you.
It's been removed at the moment. It was in Tower Gardens, it's been removed into a secure location. It hasn't yet been repaired because of the, again, resources issues at the moment to get that done.
Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to get into too much detail on the staff, Steve. Is the person that we are down, is that through long-term sickness? And is there any chance that they'll be, will they be coming back, or is it?
They will be coming back. There is a plan in place for them to come back. It's likely that initially when they do arrive back, because of the nature of the problem, that they will be on light duties for a period of time to get rehabilitated back into the team. So during that period of time, it's going to be difficult because of not being able to carry out the normal complete range of works, but that we do need to go through that sort of rehabilitation stage. So this is going to be affecting us through, I'm guessing, till at least the autumn time before we get back to any sort of normality.
Thank you.
Councillor Adrian Finlay.
Yeah, just reverting back to the hanging baskets again on Lumley Road. I think I was trying to make a point that I think it's important that we have them. I know you put down their resources, and obviously there is a concern somewhere regarding resources, but I do think that they need to be up. We need to make, I don't know if Steve Kirk can give us an update on the bins, but if we've got gleaming new bins and we do get the hanging baskets, then I think it's important that we present the town centre to the people are coming to see, It might only be a small thing, but every little helps at the moment after what we've just been through. So I really wouldn't like to see us worrying about resources on the hanging basket. I'd rather us try and jiggle things around to make sure we have got them.
Councillor Kirk?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think the town clerk gave us his solution for the resources issue. And I, for one, think it's an excellent idea. If we've made more money through burials, because sadly more people have died, if we can put that money into making the town look great, not only for our visitors, but for also our residents as well, I think that's good use of the money. And regarding the litter bins, Adrian, I'll have a word with the portfolio holder and get back to you with a date that they're expected to be installed.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Okay, well, moving forward then, no street collection licenses. The BBC were given permission to use the Jolly Fisherman. Not sure how that was, or whether that has been out yet. And then finally on communications, there's a communications table there. I was asked last time to add a few more details into the YouTube information. So you can see there that we've got YouTube views up to 861 from 392 in the last quarter, of which there was 167 hours of viewing time. There's 9 new subscribers in the quarter, and we had 6,013 impressions, which are a bit like YouTube notifications. So people get a little icon to say, this is, this video is available. So based on that, I don't know whether that's sufficient for you. That's what's available from our YouTube studio easily. But I think it does give an impression that, people are starting to engage via YouTube, and, we do get some regular viewers.
Thank you. Any further questions?
So the recommendations are as before you. So the usual sort of recommendations: to receive the report, to approve the bank reconciliations for the quarter, to note the income and expenditure and balance sheet in Appendix A. As I say, that will go forward to council once the final figures are confirmed. And then to approve the risk register, the task list in Appendix C, to review the operational information, if there are any actions for council you need to say, and then I recommend that the council that the overtime budget for 2021-2 is increased by about 8,500 to allow me to put in, get the resources that we need to do those things that I'm concerned about.
Councillor Tony Ty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to pose the question to Steve about the 8,500. That really should that not go to a vote of the committee?
I don't really understand the question, because it is going. Isn't that the recommendation going to the vote of the committee?
Well, Steve did pose that, but nobody answered the question.
Well, it's one of my recommendations. So council can choose whether or not to vote for that or not.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kirk.
Thank you. That YouTube statistics and viewing figures is actually pretty impressive as far as public engagement and having that evidence of public engagement. Perhaps us announcing these figures will prompt the press to put more of an asserted effort to report on council meetings, because it's clearly evident that the public are interested in 167 hours is a long time. Of course, that's across many sittings, but that's pretty impressive. Normally, during face-to-face council meetings, we're lucky to have 1 or 2 regular faces, and even then they would dip in and out of the meetings once they've had their half an hour or so. So I'd like, we need to continue this and think of a way that we can encourage more participation, because we've obviously got the proof now that people are interested. It'd be good to see how that can continue. I'd like to propose that we adopt all the recommendations on block, if I'm being honest, specifically in relation to item G. Steve Kirk, stated that it's a good idea. I 100% agree. Let's get this these funds back into the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I quite agree with Councillor Dan Kirk about the YouTube channel. Is there any way, I don't know if we've thought about this, that we will be able to continue with the YouTube once we start meeting in person again, or will this just be the end of it from the Zoom? I'd like to see it continue, because obviously we are getting people watch, and I'll second Councillor Dan Kirk's proposal to take them on block.
Thank you, Councillor Town Clerk, please.
The issue with videoing, it would have to be, the meeting would have to be videoed in some way. I think we've already discussed and decided, and I think many others in our position have come to the same conclusion, that hybrid meetings are very difficult and quite expensive to put together, and you would need quite a number of staff really to support it. So I don't think hybrid meetings where some people are coming via Zoom and some are live in the flesh, if you like, I don't think that's going to work. The judicial review on whether or not Zoom meetings can continue without a legislative change, the hearing was today, but the results, I haven't seen them as yet, and I don't know when they're going to come out, but hopefully we will be able to continue with Zoom meetings, at least for some of the meetings, because as we've discussed previously, for things like planning, where we're sharing documents, and also for perhaps winter meetings when it's difficult for people to get out and about, it would be useful if we've got this tool to deploy it when council wants to deploy it. So potentially we can continue with YouTube, but there would be a cost involved in creating a professional quality recording that can then be pushed out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simon Claxton.
Just a question for Town Clerk regarding the 8,500. Am I right in thinking this isn't coming out of any reserve or anywhere? This is money that we've already taken in, money for the cemetery. Is that correct?
It's income that has been earned in the last quarter of the year that is above the budget. So that £8,500 at the end of the year will go into the general reserve. So what I'm asking is, in the new year, that you take it back out of the general reserve and make it available for the overtime budget.
Okay, so that's what I mean. It's not costing. It's not going to cost any. That's fine. Sorry. Thank you.
Councillor Dan Kirk, did you leave your hand up from last time, or did you?
I wanted to reply with based on the clerk's comments. Yes, hybrid meetings would be a significant additional challenge. It is not beyond the realms of being able to implement, for sure, at a relatively low cost. And let's not forget, majority of meetings we've got 2 officers present, and having a video artifact is a great tool for writing and minutes and ensuring that it's an accurate reflection of said meeting. So I think it does hit many birds with one stone, and it wouldn't be too taxing in that respect. I appreciate it's a challenge, but I think it's something that we should explore as a council, because we've got the proof that people do want and do engage with it. And for the majority of the time, we do have 2 officers present. And I think it could be managed with minimal intervention. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been proposed and seconded that we take these on block. Do we need to vote on that, Town Clerk, first before we go to the vote, or can we just take them on block?
You can take that, I think, on recommendation. I don't think it needs to be voted in that way. You can decide how the recommendations are going to be considered, and if I mean, presumably the assumption here is that there's going to be, support for everything. Otherwise, if somebody wants to consider one thing differently, then they should speak.
Yeah. So you're all quite happy with taking this on block? Okay, we'll go to the vote then.
There's 12 votes at the moment, so that's looks to, from what I can see, to be all but one.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 5, all hire charges report is attached to report the unintended consequences of increasing the commercial all hire charges.
Mayor, as you probably recall, at the last council meeting, we discussed the hall hire charges, and as a result of that, council decided to make the commercial charges the same as the for parties and general, that sort of general hire. When we've looked at the consequence of that, we have got groups who may be sort of classified as commercial, but don't really make huge sums of money, and in fact would probably stop providing the service if they can't actually get hire charge at a reasonable level. So without mentioning any names, you might think of let's take a group who want to lose weight. They might pay £5 or £6 to come and be weighed and be given some advice and guidance. And there might be 10 of those that come during an hour's charge. Now, if we increase our charge to the party rate, well, in fact, we can't, because we don't charge hourly, so they'd have to hire it for 4 hours. That charge would then be considerably higher than it would have been under the old rate. And by the time you look at the cost of the person running it, it doesn't represent a viable opportunity. Now, are they really a commercial business? They're definitely offering a community, assistance in getting people to lose some weight. We have similar things with, fitness groups, dance groups, things like that, where people contribute and somebody is guiding them and perhaps takes a rate out of it for their own costs for providing the service. But actually, if we increase the cost, it no longer is viable and they will stop offering that service. And hence we then lose the benefit to those members of the community who would get something at a very reasonable cost. And we also lose income potentially to the cafe, because I can tell you that a lot of those that go to those groups then come in and have a cup of coffee and a refreshment afterwards. So we wouldn't be getting the higher charge in, and we would lose money out of the cafe. The difficulty we face is that obviously once council's made a decision, it's very difficult to overturn it unless we follow quite a strict procedure in standing orders. So what I'm suggesting here is that we clarify the definition of one of the other groups, a community local group, local charity, to include those sort of small semi-commercial, let's say, organisations, or one-person commercial organisations, to allow them to continue. And where it may have a positive benefit. So, for example, we might get some business people who come in for an hour to have a meeting because it's a useful meeting room. They might spend quite a bit and have lunch at the same time, which again is generating income for the cafe. But they won't come if the charge is too great, because they can get rooms cheaper, elsewhere, and then we lose out on that basis. So, and we're not offering many of those, but we fill in little gaps with those when we've got an empty hall. So for those, I'm asking that you give me some delegated authority to say, well, actually, this is a benefit to the hall, which in turn is a benefit to the people of Skegness, and therefore it's worth doing.
Councillor Dunkirk.
Yeah, thank you for that report, Town Clerk. Obviously, you've got the frontline information. I think we could add to that definition and include content along the lines of, organisations that impact residential health or well-being. So that would encompass all sorts of dance schools, organisations, to the clubs like you've mentioned, those sorts of things. And also they tend to operate a fully inclusive policy. So it's not like it's a closed door, invite only type activity. It is a service open to the general public. And with regards to you having the delegated authority to allow a business organisation to book an hour or so for commercial purposes, I think that's fine. We've just got to be conscious that if they book that many months in advance and somebody else wishes to book a full day, then that's a significant problem. But a short-term, short notice booking, I have no problem at all booking it out for an hour if staff are already present. And we might need to define exactly what that short-term period of time might be. But they need to be fully aware that you can't book 3 months in advance and half-hour meeting at 1 o'clock, which would completely knacker the ability for any other organisation to book the entire day for a significant profit. So I think we should add to that definition of local community, local group, local charity, or organisation offering help, offering benefits of health and well-being. Words of that nature, that's fully inclusive then. And we just ensure that they kind of have an open door policy as opposed to an invite only type thing. And I'd be happy to allow them to have it at the reduced rate.
Thank you. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome the report from the clerk. Yeah, I think it's bang on. I think we could end up losing a fair bit of business in the current model. If that's Councillor Dunkirk's proposal, I would welcome and second that. I think it's a fantastic idea. So yeah, thank you.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
I'd just like to apologise for my late attendance, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We were aware of it. Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank the Town Clerk for his report. I'm mindful of his comments, but I'm really worried about this wording. If you talk about these, let's say they're a weight loss group, where the person running that weight loss group is affiliated to a much larger multinational organisation, and they take a cut out of those £5 fees or whatever the fee may be. that I can appreciate they're not making huge sums of money. It is a benefit. There's also another company that comes to Skegness about twice a year, which you could also argue was for the wellness and of the residents of Skegness, because it does full health checks. It does them at the storehouse and it charges you £125 a person. So if you say, oh, if it's for the health of Skegness, it gets a reduced rate, that company, which is a blue chip PLC company, would make the same use of our hall as a person with 20 members in his or her slimming group. So I just think we need to be very, very careful of the wording. I have no issues that we do this, but I just want to be mindful that we don't have people abusing the hall for huge financial gain.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, they're all disappearing. Sorry, I'll just bring the list up. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with all three previous speakers, and I can see where Councillor Steve Kirk's coming from. But maybe that's where the delegation to the town clerk comes in a little bit, so that we've got to get the wording right. He wouldn't want to stop a small swimming club or a little dance group or whatever, but a big blue chip company would be taking the mickey. So I think maybe, you know, the delegated to the town clerk, he could actually pick out those people that are doing that, or we could adjust the wording. But I mean, I'm not sure how, because people will try and find a loophole if they can.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Sorry for being late. I was at Thursday group of parishes. I wondered if one way around it, Mr. Mayor, would be if it was a limited company or a VAT registered company. I don't know how that, because I think those small slimming clubs and health clubs and dance clubs are all run by like individual people that won't be VAT registered, and I thought that would be some sort of lead in so you don't get a big company on board. You know, if they're VAT registered, then that gives you an indication. If they're a limited company, that gives you an indication. So I think that might be a guide, you know, around that, or to put in, you know, if you're a limited company or VAT registered, there's a different viewpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dunkirk.
That's a good idea from Councillor Dennis. Yeah, we're quite right that Steve Kirk pointed out that there are potential problems. I still think that if that did happen for a couple of events, it's something that the clerk can then report back a year later for us to find a way to close that loophole. Yes, one organisation may get, you know, a few £100 worth of discount that they otherwise wouldn't have had, but there is a potential opportunity for A, getting people to use the service that wouldn't normally have used it, and B, there's an additional potential benefit of cafe revenue. But I do quite like the idea that the Councillor Dennis suggested that limited companies may be subject to some sort of get out of jail free clause that allows the clerk to do the required due diligence to kind of just protect our but I appreciate the clerk needs to have very specific policies in order to implement those rules. But I'm happy to add to that, to my proposal based on Councillor Dennis's suggestion of allowing the clerk to. But what we don't want to go down the route of is having to prove their worth in that sense, because then it's additional bureaucratic work that the officers may have to do, which would have probably as much a cost as opposed to the money that was saved. So I think allow the clerk to apply judgment on that in the nature of whether they're VAT registered. I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wondered whether we could incorporate as well some sort of local connection criteria. If you're running a dance group in Skegness or a slimming group in Skegness or whatever it is, the chances are you're local to this area. If you're a company that's coming from London, Birmingham or Manchester, then that's going to be a big red flag to the clerk that they shouldn't be getting this different rate.
Good point, Councillor Kirk. Councillor Danko.
I'm happy to include that as well. I think that's a fantastic idea. We're closing down as many potential loopholes as possible. I think that would stop more than the VAT registration personally, just by having the fact that the booker, the person booking the organisation, must be a resident or within the vicinity of Skegness or East Lindsey or something like that. I think that would prevent 99% of those exact examples that Steve mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Have you got all the information for that proposal, Town Clerk? I just need it seconded by Councillor Danny Brooks, if that's so.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got to say I'm less keen on the limited company, you know, and trying to get proof or otherwise is, I think, as Councillor Dankirk said, we could end up with a lot of bureaucracy. I think the local connection is a good one, because I think most of the organisations, if they're not actually based directly in Skegness, are sort of in the neighbouring, you know, villages or area. So I think that would be probably an easier one for us to operate with.
Thank you. Councillor Dankirk, did you leave your hand up from last time?
That's good to get the feedback straight from the clerk with regards to that. I think that's the angle that we'll need to go, and I'm sure Councillor Brooks will accept the amendments to the original proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely.
Can I just bring... Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Councillor Jimmy Brooks?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got it proposed and seconded. All in favour, please show. So that's everybody apart from one. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 6, the Town Clerk update, verbal report for the Caftan Zamp manager vacancy and Jolly Fisherman character funding. Can we just put Councillor Brooks, Danny Brooks and Billy Brooks in the waiting room, please?
Thank you.
They're in the waiting room now.
Okay.
Okay. Cafe Dan Zamp manager vacancy. The advert has been out for a couple of weeks now. We're on various job boards. We're on Indeed. We're on Total Jobs. We're through the job centre. We've put it out through social media. We've recently changed the advert a little bit around because the initial response was very well. It was non-existent. I've got to say, for the first week, we didn't even have any inquiries for further information. We have had a few inquiries now for further information, so there's still a little bit of time for those people to apply, but it's certainly a lot lower response, than we had last time. And even though we had quite a lot of people who weren't suitable for the position last time, there were applications and interest. What I'm seeing here is, well, actually, there doesn't appear to be much interest. Now, I'm not sure whether it might be because of the Easter holiday period. Maybe people had kids at home and weren't looking. It may be people are still on furlough and are not yet in a position where they want to make a decision as to whether or not to change jobs. It may be that, I've got to say, it might be that people have got comfortable not in employment. I don't know. but it is disappointing that we haven't had I expected when we put it out that we would have a big response, as we usually do to all jobs that we advertise, even if the applicants aren't necessarily those that we would want to appoint. But not having a response is very disappointing. So we're going to be watching and waiting, and we might need to have to put this advert out again. We might have to reconsider what we do in relation to the opening, how we open, whether it's on a much more limited basis or whether it's at all, until we've got somebody in position. So I've planned to do a very short report back to the annual council, because that might be the last meeting that we've got for a little while. So we'll have to wait and see how we do this week and early next week, and then I'll report back on that on the 5th of May. And if necessary, you can give me some thoughts on where to proceed from there. Moving on to the Jolly Fisherman character funding, I was asked to contact the bid, and
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Dennis is trying to get your attention there.
Sorry, I've got hands up. You're moving. Councillor Dennis, sorry. I've got.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm chairman of the bid board, so I'd like to do I think it's a category B. I won't be able to vote on this, but I can stay in the meeting. Okay, but I would like to say that we have a board meeting tomorrow. That's as much as I can say. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. I do have to apologise because you do disappear on the screen. I have to write you down as you sort of pop up. I've got Councillor Finlay.
Can I just, if I could just finish on that, the bits and pieces that just so that we're clear on that. With the Jolly Fisherman funding, therefore, I have contacted the bid, and it seems that funding for £1,000 per annum might be available, but the bid would like, in response to that, to have access to the Jolly Fisherman as well for perhaps 10 times per year for that money. Now, depending on what we decide tonight, as Councillor Dennis has said, there is a big board meeting tomorrow, so that could be more fully then firmed up, if you like, as to the way forward. But it was in the recommendations of the Jolly Fisherman Working Group that the Jolly was only available in conjunction with the mayor, and clearly so that this funding offer would be dependent on the Jolly being available to the bid as well. So I think there's a decision there for this committee to take in order to clarify whether we get the funding or the bid are able to offer the funding or not.
Thank you, Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, just revert back to the Captain Stamp Manager. Have we still got a list of all the original applicants? Because, like you say, if we had quite a lot of interest, have we still got the contact details for the original applicants to give them an opportunity to reapply? You know, I know you did say that some of them might not have been ideal, but some of them might have been. So I just thought, well, I just didn't know whether you'd gone down that route again. That's all it was. Thank you.
We, in accordance with best practice, we of course deleted the previous applicants after 6 months, because that's good practice to do that. We shouldn't be holding on to details who, you know, are following an appointment and then 6 months. I've got to say, a lot of those applicants were not of suitable quality anyway, and I certainly wouldn't be happy being responsible for that, some of those people operating as the manager of the cafe. I think we've got to have the right person to run it. It needs to be somebody who can run it. Bear in mind that, you know, we've got health, hygiene, we're talking about allergens, we're talking about, you know, maintaining the 5-star rating. We're also talking about somebody who can manage staff, manage money, manage stock, and also has the outgoing qualities to be able to engage with the community as well. So that, you know, there is a skill set there that we need to find. You know, there are a lot of advertisements out there at the moment. You know, we're competing with a lot of others offering, you know, in restaurants, cafes, bars, etc., when they come back into operation.
Councillor Claxton.
Yeah, just before we go, before we move past the Jolly Fisherman, if we've finished with the verbal report on the manager vacancy, can we bring councillors, both Councillor Brooks back in, because I think they should hear about the character funding as well before we move on, if that's all right.
Town Clerk. I've got 4. Councillor Dennis, did you want to come back? Just on
the cafe thing, really, I can speak on that. I think it's a really, really skilled job that we're asking somebody to do, and I think the only thing against it is the package. I don't think it's a big money package, really. Whether it's the money that's doing that, I would ask the guidance of the town clerk what he thinks, but to me, looking at it, it didn't seem a very, looking at what other people are paying around and about. You know, I've been talking with fellow councillors, and it's not the best. It's not really big money you're paying them, so maybe that's an option.
I'll bring the other councillors in. We've got Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. What have we got as any sort of ideas going forward for the cafe manager position, if anything, if nothing does come up? Because we can't leave it much longer. It needs staffing if we're going to run it. If we're not going to run it, then we don't want to be running it. So what realistic other options do we think we might have to fall back on?
Well, in response to both Councillor Cunnington's and Councillor Dennis's questions there, I do refer back to my original proposal of more than a year ago, where I said that I didn't think, you know, I proposed that we offer a higher salary then, and council were adamant that the money was too much and cut it back substantially from what you know, I was looking. I had done, you know, a bit of market testing and looking at, and if you think that compared with the salary that was offered by Magnavita for the manager of that cafe, you know, we're offering, even at our maximum point, it's some £6,000 per annum less than they're offering with almost an identical job description. So it's not, when I think we need to realize that we're running a community cafe, and it's quite a different proposition from a purely commercial cafe. We can't make the same commercial decisions that a commercial cafe would make, and the operation is very much tied in with the hall and other council services and and community integration projects that we want to run. So it is a more challenging role on that basis. But we did get someone last time, so I'm not saying that there isn't somebody. I think there might be somebody out there, but it's obviously it might take us a while to actually identify them and get them in at that money. It has to be somebody who really wants to do that job.
Thank you, Councillor Tony Tyne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say on the Jolly Fishermen, I think we should leave discussing that at the moment until we see what the bid are going to do tomorrow in their meeting, and then call another meeting of the committee, Jolly Fishermen Committee, to see where we go. We did state that it was only to be used with the mayor, so we need to look at that and see whether we're going to go with the £1,000 and 10 visits to the bid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm aware that Councillor Claxton said that, and rightly suggested that the councillors Billy and Danny Brooks could be brought back into the discussion regarding the Jolly Fishermen. So perhaps it might be prudent to close down any outstanding questions on the cafe first, and then we can continue with the discussion about the Jolly Fishermen.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Dan Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just had a quick look on Indeed, as I did yesterday, with other jobs in the area for cafe management positions. There's one cafe management position job in Skegness. It's paying £10.15 an hour for a supermarket. And then there's our community cafe manager ranging from £11 to £12.48 an hour. I appreciate I do appreciate Councillor Dennis's point 100% that maybe we do need to up it. However, this is the hospitality sector, and pretty much all of our hospitality individuals, workers, are going to be on furlough right now. So the jobs market is no way consistent with what we're used to, as the clerk said in his report. If, for example, we advertised one post for an office position and had nearly 80 applicants for one position, which is completely out of the ordinary. But I would expect that people in hospitality haven't got the desire to change position because A, they're on furlough, getting a fair wage for some people probably not actually doing any sort of work at all. So that's going to completely skew our judgment and our opinions on whether we're going to be able to successfully hire another cafe manager. Had the economy opened and the people were back in their job and hired, and then they realize, oh God, this is what I really hated about my job, I'm going to start looking around for other jobs. That will happen. I think, as much as we don't want to have to do it, but I think if we put the position up to £15 an hour, I still think we'd be in the same situation, for sure, or even £20. I don't know. I still think we would be struggling to secure positions, because I don't think every worker understands that in theory they could work for another company whilst on furlough. I know it's a bit naughty, but in theory, I think most people are still, bound by the company that they're being furloughed by, which is a good thing. That they are loyal to the company that's essentially paying their wages. And for that reason, it's completely skewed the actual job market for a hospitality position, which this indeed is. So I just want to reiterate those concerns. If we were to change the salary, I'm not saying that a good cafe manager would not be worth more. I'm not saying that one iota. But even if we do, I don't think we're going to be securing. I don't think it's going to impact it that much, in my opinion. What are other councillors' opinion on this?
Councillor Cunnington, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I can agree with Councillor Dennis and Councillor Kirk. Councillor Kirk more so, making a very valid point about people probably feeling stable and committed to the current employers. I mean, they've been on furlough for a year. So they feel loyal to them, so they're going to stick it out, or they're going to sit at home, get in furlough until the time that they either go back to work or lose their jobs. Yes, and thank Councillor Kirk again for his research just now on Indeed. We're paying above some of the big employers. It is our residents' money we're playing with here. It's our residents that are actually employing this person. It's them that pay the council tax. We haven't got a huge amount of money in the bank like Magna Vitae or some of the big supermarkets. So until we start seeing some sort of a profit coming in from this, I would be totally against us upping the salary because we haven't got the money in the bank. It's the residents' money we're playing with. So until we start seeing some profit, I think the wages should stay where they are.
Thank you. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Totally agree with Councillor Dankirk and Councillor Cunnington. I think the figures are skewed at the minute. We don't want to be upping the wages at the minute. We need to hold fire because we'll end up making the wrong decision, and it is the residents who end up paying for it. So I think we need to stay, just stay, don't put the wages up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Chai.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with what's been said. We're in a very difficult situation at the moment. As we all know, nothing's going to be opening up until mid-May, when people will go back to work and then discover that they probably don't like it anymore. And as Councillor Kirk said, that's when they'll probably start looking round. So, I agree that I think the wages, I think the salary is a good salary for a cafe manager. I agree with Steve now, possibly that cafe manager is going to be looking after the all as well. So possibly another couple of £1,000 to do that. But I understood he was already paying our ex-manager that money. Thank you.
Chair Clark.
Yeah, I mean, when I started my report off, I didn't mention salary increase, and that wasn't the purpose. And this committee can't actually make that decision in any case, because it's a matter for council to make that decision. Committee can't do that. But I would just draw it's very easy to go on the job boards and actually say, well, that person's got that title, therefore they're doing the same job. You need to actually look at what they're doing. And in something like a supermarket cafe, for instance, they'll have all of the procedures set out for them by somebody else. All of everything will be, set out, and they will just be operating those procedures. Our cafe manager is actually developing those procedures and having to react to the situation. So it's a slightly different situation. It's more, if you've got cafe owners, for example, often they will employ a manager, but that they may actually take some of the responsibility for the day-to-day running themselves. They would set the direction about what the cafe's doing, how it's operating, etc., etc. Now, some of that, again, falls back to the cafe manager, to devise the menus, etc., 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 which they wouldn't be doing in a supermarket because it's a fixed, this is what it is. So it's not always that easy to compare. But I wasn't suggesting that we look at the wages today. I do think there is an issue perhaps there when you start looking at the job description and what we're asking them to do. Maybe that puts people off for that money. But, as I said earlier, I think we have to run with what we've got at the moment, see what happens. It might mean that we have to extend the time that we're advertising for, and that may have a consequence for either when we open, or if we open, we might have to do so on a much more limited basis than we had originally intended.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, a couple of observations there. I was one of the people who originally said, I think actually it's Councillor Jimmy Brooks who suggested the pay scale was too high, we should bring it down, and the vote was taken, and that was one. I've always said that I think we need to actually describe the role, what the role really is. The role is not a cafe manager. That's part of the role, but they're also managing a community asset. They're also developing stakeholders from the community to use our hall and use our other things. So I think it's much bigger than just a cafe manager. But that's as Steve quite right said, so Town Clerk quite right said, that's a debate for another day. I would just echo what Councillor Dankirk said. We recently recruited somebody 6 weeks ago. They gave 4 weeks notice to their employer. We recruited them from the hospitality sector, and their vacancy is still out there. Nobody's applied for their job to try and fill it. People aren't. They're on furloughs, they're on 80%. Spring's around the corner. They're just sitting put. And I think as soon as everybody gets back to work, exactly as other councillors said, they'll realise, oh, that bloke really does get on my nerves. I forgot what an awful boss he was, or whatever it may be. Obviously, that's not anything that any of our staff are familiar with, but apparently it does happen in other workplaces because everybody thinks Steve's wonderful. He's told me that. Anyway, I just think it's a time will tell, and I just think we need to sit tight, extend the advert if need be, and open at reduced, and I'm sure applicants will come.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. You know, the supermarket job, it was not that much under, and the time you get 10% off your shopping, one thing and another, it's not long before that money soon comes up and around there. And as Stephen said, this is Stephen, the Town Clerk, said, you know, that the job's all set out for them. My big worry is if we don't get somebody, all of a sudden they have to have a month's notice in, then it takes them 2 or 3 months to work it up to where we need to be, and we're July, August. That's my concern. You've got a community asset not working. That's my concern.
Thank you.
So, you know, and I think you're going to spoil the ship for ape at the tar, and you need to take care, because at the end of the day, we need to give a service. We've got a community hub with it not running correctly. That can't be right. And if you could just pluck somebody out there, give them a few extra pound notes, and that would make a difference. But I do think there's a lot more to it than we realise. And that's what I'm concerned about, is the salary we're paying is not enough, in my view. And I believe that if we're not careful, 3 months down the line, we'll still not be open. And where does that get us? We're just telling me how we want to feed people into the cafe, how these people come to the cafe, you know, because they've used the hall, but there's going to be no cafe if we're not careful. So I think we just need to be aware. That's all I'm telling to colleagues, you know, just telling you beware.
Thank you, Dankirk. Councillor Dankirk.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Dennis just raised some significant points, and I know this isn't a school setting, but there are cases where you must fill that post urgently, which is where agency staff might be something that could plug the short-term immediate concern. I take note of the clerk's points about the cafe manager having to develop and set the policies. Well, what did the previous cafe manager do? It should be a case that they're able to pick up the policies and procedures and the systems that the previous cafe manager implemented. And I do, of course, I 100% understand there's a learning opportunity for anybody that comes into a new post, and there is going to be a time for that to happen. But I would even potentially, if we had to, explore the possibility of having to use an agency member of staff for a few months, if that post was still vacant. I'm confident once it resumes, once the market and the economy resumes, that that post will get filled. If it means that the salary needs to be adjusted, then that's a conversation for a later date. But let's not forget that it could well be that we could explore agency if we had to, as a last resort, to ensure that we're ready to open. It's not ideal, I get it, no agency staff is, but that's what most hospitality people would do themselves if they had no choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to come back, Town Clerk?
I mean, agency may be an option. They tend to be, obviously, again, more expensive than employing. The problem about you know, had we been open for 2 or 3 years, I would absolutely agree, you know, that we've got we'd have procedures there. But we were only open from mid-July till the end of October. We haven't, you know, we barely got our toe in the water in terms of operating the cafe, you know, let alone getting it sorted and running smoothly. So you know, it's almost like we've gone back to ground zero with it. And somebody else coming in, you know, will obviously bring fresh perspective, fresh ideas. And indeed, we might find that when we open, the clientele, the way, you know, those coming in have different ideas and different demands and different needs than those that we dealt with previously. So, you know, we're still in a very much an infancy in terms of running the cafe. You know, okay, we've had the building a year, but it was only open for a very short number of weeks, and we shouldn't forget that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yet again, I must agree with Councillor Dan Kirk. Yeah, we may have to go down the option of agency staff, but that is for a discussion later on. What I would like to see is, could the clerk give us a full job description of what he is expecting and what we assume to be a CAF manager, and email it out to all of us to see exactly what he wants that person to do, so we can actually look and see if the wages are correct or not. Thank you.
I can do it. It obviously was provided to council when council approved the post, 15, 16 months ago. But yeah, I can resend that out.
Yeah, thank you. It might just help refresh people's memory to see what's what.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Councillor Kirk, good job done, quick thinking. Thank you very much. I hadn't thought about the agency, it never ever crossed my mind, but there are some agencies that specialise in hospitality. Could we ask the clerk to explore for the short term the full costings of hospitality manager through an agency? Because obviously I know they cost more to employ through the agency, but you do make savings. You don't pay all the bits and pieces. You don't have to provide the holidays, the pensions, those sorts of things. So in the short term, it could be a saving, and it could give us that chance to give that person a trial that then may wish to take on the full-time position. And if we kept it over this summer at least, so a 6-month period through an agency, it would get us up and running as soon as we would need to be, and it would give us a chance to give somebody a trial to see what they feel and see how we need to adapt the role for them to be willing to take it on.
Thank you. Town Clerk, did you want to come back at that one before bringing the next councillor?
I mean, I can find I'd be a bit nervous about employing somebody through an agency who then, you know, with the prospect of them becoming a member of staff, because obviously you then are potentially paying finder's fees to the agency, and they can quite often be quite extortionate amounts of money. It's a possibility. I don't think we need to decide today. You know, my report was to give you an update today. I think, to be honest, that, you know, it's for noting. We'll see how things go in the next week or two. I may have to bring back to council and, you know, get a bit further guidance then. But I would do so with a bit more of a plan as to what the next steps could be if we haven't got the right type of person, because trying to think up ideas in this forum is not easy, and to actually consider whether or not they would work in practice, it's not an ideal forum for doing that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. No, I was just actually asking if you could explore the costing so that when you come back to us in a few weeks' time, we would know the costings of the agency, against the wages that we're paying to see physically how they stand, how the difference is between the two.
I mean, I can do that. I can contact some agencies and get some potential figures. I don't think they'd be any more accurate than that at this stage, though, because they will often depend on the skill set of the person who's being employed. But I can put some tentative inquiries out to see what level we might have to pay.
That's all I was asking. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you much, Mayor. Just a very, very quick one. When the clerk earlier mentioned that when we initially advertised, MV Cafe Manager was 6K above our highest spinal point, then one of the other councillors commented, well, it's different for them. They've got a bank balance full of money. Just for information, most of MV money comes from the ratepayers of East Lindsey, and the grants that East Lindsey District Council pay them to stay open. So don't think they did it because they've got loads of money to slosh around. They did it because that's how much they thought they would need to pay to get the right person in position. Rightly or wrongly, I'm not saying that's the right answer. I'm just saying, don't think they are a commercial outfit, and it was a commercial, and they did it because their bank balance is full. If anything could be further from the truth, then that is it.
Yeah. Councillor Claxton.
I'd just like to propose that we note the verbal report for the Cafe Danset Manager vacancy now, and can we move on to the Jolly Fisherman funding and bring the two councillors back?
Yeah. Councillor Cunnington, you left your hand up from last time, I think, didn't you? Yeah. So we note that this report before we bring the two councillors back. All in favour that we note this?
That's a majority.
Thank you. Can we bring Councillor Danny Brooks and Billy Brooks back in, please? Welcome back, councillors. We're moving on to the Jolly Fisherman character funding now.
Thank you.
Councillor Adrian Finlay. Oh, no, you've left your hand up.
Mayor, do you want me just to recap for Councillor Brooks and Councillor Brooks's benefit?
Yeah.
The situation here is that following previous instruction, I approached the bid. The bid have said that they may be willing to offer £1,000 per annum, but if they did so, they would like to have access to the Jolly Fisherman for 10 times, a minimum of 10 times per year. There is a board meeting, as Councillor Dennis mentioned earlier, tomorrow. And so previously the council had said through the working group had put forward recommendations that the Jolly Fisherman only accompany the mayor, and obviously therefore accepting the grant would mean not following that suggestion. So it's really for debate on what happens next and whether or not the bid board tomorrow discuss it or not, I guess, because if council aren't willing, then there's nothing for them to discuss.
Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, can we just have a recap on what it actually costs for us to actually release Jolly?
Town clerk.
Well, we're not at all entirely sure. We know at this moment in time, Jolly's not going out because of the issues associated with COVID. But once we get into a position where it is possible, there are costs associated with the cleaning of the equipment, any repair and maintenance of the equipment, having insurance for the volunteers and I know we said that some of the councillors will be minders, but I'm not sure whether that will always be the case. And there's transportation costs, etc., etc., etc. There are, as was discussed at the working group, there are quite a number of guidelines around people being in the Jolly Fisherman costume, and if the council is running that, then we need to be mindful of health and safety and well-being of the person who is acting as the character.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm just a bit mindful. I know we need certain things in place to run Jolly all the time, like the insurance and things, but it's actually the running cost. Yes, and I appreciate the bid considering offering the £1,000, but those 10 times they're looking to receive back, if it's going to cost us £50 a time for them to use Jolly, in theory, that's only actually going to provide us with a £500 grant towards what we were looking for anyway. So I'm just saying we just need to be mindful that we've got the actual running costs when he's out with the bid, which could be 10 times a year. And if that is the cleaning and things like that, just a basic cleaning, we could send it with a shortfall still.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For me, it's cheeky, to be honest, for the bid to be putting a set number of appearances on the Jolly donation, because the bid is there to help, promote the town, help businesses, bring people in. If the Jolly's going out with the mayor, he's doing exactly that. The mayor goes to businesses opening and things like this. And so for, them not to be willing to support a community business promotion thing in the town, and to be asking for a set number of visits or whatever it might be, I just think it's cheeky.
Thank you, Councillor Claxton.
Yeah, I don't think this is right. Kind of being held to ransom in a way. We've gone to the bid and asked for some money for the upkeep of Jolly and funding for him. But with like the bid take enough from the businesses of Skegness, but they're only willing to give it back if they can borrow it when they want. I'm not in favour of that that little part of the deal, shall we say? I wouldn't be in favour of that.
Thank you, Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To be quite honest, if I was the bid, I'd be asking for the same thing. So I don't blame them asking. We're going to donate. Can we use the Jolly? I wouldn't blame them. I would do the same. What we've got to consider is, firstly, I'd like to ask Councillor Dennis if the bid is likely to offer the £1,000, or if that's just us asking and they're going to turn us down. And the other thing is, you've also got to remember that the bid would, more than likely, they wouldn't be taking Jolly to Mablethorpe or to Chapel. It would be anything they were doing in Skegness, which hopefully the bid would be promoting Skegness. So, yes, I don't like being held to blackmail. However, if it was me, I'd be doing the same. Can we use the Jolly? And we're going to be promoting Skegness. So it's a double-edged sword. That's my view on it.
Thank you, Councillor Dunkirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Brooks has kind of said half of it. I don't at all think it's cheeky. They've got to guarantee and they've got to confirm that they're going to get a return on their investment. We've asked for some money. They said, yeah, maybe, but there's a few caveats, and that's fair. There could be a potential risk to the bid in the sense that if they donated the money, then in theory, the town council could then do nothing with it, and all of a sudden the town council is £1,000 better off, and the bid has not got any return on its investment to the businesses that have paid into it. That's their point of view. What I'm interested in is, however, is to get a little bit more clarity, because if it's our volunteers and it's us that's cleaning it, and us that's transporting it and delivering it for £100 a pop, that seems like fantastic value for the bid, a bit of a harsh deal for us. If, however, they were providing, it was their volunteers were using it, they were cleaning it as based on our policies that we set out, and we're collecting it and booking it through us, then I'd kind of accept it, because it's benefiting the town, which is the purpose of this activity. And yeah, thank you very much for their donation. But I'd want to definitely seek some clarity on how those 10 visits, because they said up to 10 visits, wasn't it? So if they're the ones that are providing the volunteers and the relevant due diligence for that, that's great. If we're the ones that are having to do DBS clearance checks and on their volunteers or whatever, that would be a financial bad decision for this council, in my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Billy Brooks, did you have your hand up? Did you put it back down again? You don't want to speak. Okay. Councillor Adrian Finlay.
Yeah, I think it's the offer of £1,000 great. It's fantastic, but for me, if it's staying in Skegness, which I think Sid nodded his head, yeah, it's staying in Skegness. So I don't see a problem. I mean, yeah, it'd be lovely if the bid could contribute £1,000 towards it, but to use it, why can't they just go down the booking process? Because if, I don't know, the town clerk might be able to tell me how soon you can book Jolly, but if the bid did want to use Jolly, then it might end up being double booked, or we could end up letting somebody down. So I think, for me personally, I think rather than not necessarily be able to ransom, but if the bid could give us £1,000 towards its upkeep and just book it as normal, then I don't see why it needs to go anywhere but within the council. It's just my view of it.
Thank you. Before we answer anything, I'll bring Councillor Steve Kirk in.
Yeah, thank you very much. I won't be voting on this item, but I just want you to be aware that if I was voting on this item, I would put in a caveat that if the bid want to use it, they are responsible for its collection, they're responsible for its cleaning, and they're responsible for its return. They get the use of the facility, but the council does not get the cost of the facility. So if they want to use it to promote beach racing or whatever it may be on the seafront, then that's fine, but they do it at their cost. The £1,000 is just to allow them to use the costume, but the cleaning and the collection and delivery, they stand the cost of, not this town council.
Thank you, Councillor Claxton.
Also, going off of what Councillor Steve Kirk just said about the collection and the thing, but also like if this does go ahead, I'd like to put something in there about damage. If it comes back damage, that they cover those costs as well.
Thank you, Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, a lot of what the councillors have said have actually just enhanced what I said earlier. And this is the point. Is the donation enough to warrant the amount of cleaning that? We really need to know what the bid are looking to do with the costume before we can talk about this anymore. I mean, we can't have it costing us. Otherwise, the £1,000, we haven't actually been able to do anything by upkeep of Jolly with the £1,000 that's been granted.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If somebody could refresh my memory, were we looking at charging to let the Jolly to go out? We were going to charge for him, or was it just going to be if someone booked him and he was with the mayor, it was free?
Councillor Tony Ty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I've listened to everybody. First of all, I would say that we made a commitment that the Jolly Fisherman would only be used with the mayor. That was the commitment from the committee. What we need to do is look at the £1,000 and it would be enough to run Jolly. No two ways about that. With the £1,000, it would be enough. Now, I am worried that some of you are thinking that they are going to come and borrow the suit, take it away, and then they're going to clean it, look after it and bring it back. And I don't think they are going to do that. I think they want Jolly and his minder to come to any event, the 10 events that they're asking for, to come out and just do those events. And if that's the case, then I would say that I personally are quite happy with that. The £1,000 will pay for Jolly for the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton.
Sorry, left my hand up.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I'd just like to thank Councillor Ty for his clarification. That answers a lot of the questions which I had in my mind. He's obviously got a lot of experience with regards to Jolly. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Ty in the fact that we made a commitment that the Jolly went out with the mayor, and you know, it was if it's a free service, then I can't understand why the mayor wouldn't go out to whatever the bid is asking the Jolly to go for. You know, if it's promoting the town, then the mayor should be there. If they're trying to exclude the mayor just because they want the Jolly and not the mayor, then you know, I think they're a team, and promoting the town is a team effort and should be a team effort.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis.
Just a bit of clarification from the town clerk. Can I just give you a rough idea of when I rang round? Is that possible for me to do that, town clerk?
With the mayor's permission, you can speak as a category B. You can be asked to speak as a member of the public or a professional advisor in that capacity. So you're not speaking as a councillor belonging to this council. You're speaking it as that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Mr. Dennis.
Right.
Mr. Dennis, fire away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The difficulty we have is that the bid represents the coast from Gibraltar Point to right up to Saltfleet Bay and beyond. So therefore, we're not totally Skegness centric. And what we have to do, we have to try to have a measured effect to our levy payers all along the strip of what we're spending. Bear in mind, we of course we want the mayor, you know, but we'd like Jolly as well. And we know it won't be even 10, I don't think. We just said 10 because, you know, that's the way it was. It will not be going anywhere apart from Skegness. Therefore, it's a type of match funding, if you like. And at least we can say to any levy payer that complains, well, you've done that with the Jolly, blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, well, yes. But, you know, they're match funding it. So, you know, we give them this and it comes to that, and it's like a type of match funding. And if I can also go as well, what's coming up at the board meeting tomorrow as well, is also the bands for the town. And we shall have some news on you on that. And it's very, very positive from what I'm getting. I just I cherry pick the board and then we have a board meeting and I've got some idea of where we're going. So I think that, I don't think we would want to go down the road as being responsible for Jolly. I think that's, Tony Ty's got the experience to do that. He's done it for many moons. And I think that would be correct. And he would be mortified if it has to go out. I don't know if the insurance is a problem with it. That's a question for the town clerk. If that is a problem, then there's no reason it can't come under make sure it's under the auspice of our insurance in the bid as well. but we certainly would want you to be running it because you run it. It's yours. So, or it's ours as a town, but we wouldn't want to take responsibility from Councillor Ty on that. And that's all I've got to say. But the meeting's tomorrow, and I'll let the town clerk know as soon as we've had the meeting, and on the bands as well. Okay.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question, Councillor Dennis, regarding like the area, like you say, the coast, which I appreciate. The bit does the coast. The other areas have mascots as well. Obviously, when they'll be coming to you for the same sort of thing. Will you put the same in place for those? Will you treat everybody fairly and for that particular mascot if they should come forward?
If they should come forward, they haven't done yet. Nobody else done yet. But if they do, certainly.
But if they're listening to our meeting, no,
certainly
the same policy, the same.
It's absolutely across the board. We treat everybody fairly.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other
questions? A lot of people don't understand that, and that's what gets our hands tied sometimes, because they say Skegness, 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 but it's not. It's the levy payers go all the way up the coast, and it's their responsibility to level that like an even playing field. It's got to be correct.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak? So where do we need to go from here, Town Clerk?
Well, it seems to me now that things have been sort of explained that what we're looking at is, yes, probably a number of events can be attended when they're bid run events, but the likelihood is that the mayor would be going as well. On the occasions when the mayor isn't present, it might fall to the deputy mayor or a past mayor, as we occasionally have to do, to have that representation with Jolly. I mean, the key thing at this moment in time is obviously we're still under COVID restrictions, so we can't start that process yet. But if we've got if we hear in the next few days that we've got that money coming forward, then the working group can meet again and look at how we can start the process of actually getting Jolly ready to go out and to be accompanying the mayor on to events and things in the future.
Thank you. And can I just point out before we go any further that all the events that the bidders held on the coast, whether it be the Kite Fest, the Reggae Fest, the park, the mayor always got invited. There's no doubt about it. We did attend, and we got invited. Can I bring Councillor Danny Brooks in?
Yeah, it's just a quick one, Mr. Mayor, and for the clerk. At the end of the day, what you've got to ask yourself is this. Let's just say, for example, we didn't take the money off of the bid, and then obviously it won't be next week, but let's say for next week they wanted the Jolly, you wouldn't say no because they're promoting Skegness. So I think taking the money with whatever they're going to use him for, I believe they'll use him with the mayor. And like Tony, Councillor Ty said, if that covers the running cost, then we've got a win-win, because there'll be other events that the bid haven't organised that will want to use the Jolly promoting Skegness. So I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I was just going to say that if this needs proposing in any way, shape or form on all the clarification we've had, I'm more than happy to propose that Jolly's used in conjunction with the mayor for the benefit of the bid towards the donation that they're looking to provide.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Ty.
Yeah, I completely concur with what the last two speakers have said, and I'm quite happy to take on board that if he does go out for the bid, then we could use the bid's insurance on those occasions instead of the town councils. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I come back on that? I mean, that would be a bit difficult to arrange, because you've then got potentially double insurance, which insurance companies don't like. And I think for clarity purposes, the council has insured the costume. We will also be insuring the volunteers that are associated with that, and it will be under our public liability insurance if we're operating it. So mixed insurance, there's potential for the insurance companies to not be too happy, but also for things to fall between two stools. So I'd rather be clear that the council would be doing that. It will make no or negligible difference to our insurance costs because we're already covering Jolly for other events anyway.
I fully agree there, Town Clerk, because then we know fully that all our people out there are insured correctly. Councillor, put my list up, sorry, because you all move about. Councillor Tony Ty.
Yes, thanks for that, Steve. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm quite happy doing it all as under one banner. There isn't a problem to that. I hadn't anticipated going out until at least probably the end of May with the situation until it's completely cleared up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton.
Because this is a verbal report, is there something, are we voting on any decisions tonight, or is this just to be noted?
I think it is just to be noted, but Councillor Dennis now has clarity over the council's intention and can confirm that with the board, his board tomorrow.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'd propose that we note the verbal report and we can move on.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, and I think it's good that we can take this further. Thank you. All in favour, please show. Okay, we've got them all, because I know Councillor Dennis can't vote, so thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 7, Welcome Back Fund. It's attached to update members on the meeting with ELDC officers regarding the Welcome Back Fund. Town Clerk, please.
As you recall, this fund was something that was put forward to, it's aimed at tourist areas with a view to trying to, if you like, beautify or make the places a bit more welcoming so that tourists come back. Because of the time constraints on it, I had a meeting with East Lindsey officers, and have come up with a list of things which I've put forward to them from that discussion. So these are the sorts of things that might be acceptable within the fund, albeit East Lindsey is still waiting for the very final details of it to come through. But I understand that they're hoping to clarify, and that they're also going around and speaking to other town and parish councils, because the part of the fund is to actually have that involvement. So what I've tried to do is to look at some of those areas that I know are of concern. So, for instance, the entrance from Lumley Road to Tower Gardens. Yes, it is something that we're probably going to look at again within the town fund, but is there some opportunity to actually get things moving here a little bit quicker? So things like the cleaning, repainting that we'd already discussed, getting the bird deterrent gel up. And interestingly, what I found was that actually employing people is also potentially part of the funding opportunity. And so there is a proposal in here that we could perhaps get funding to employ somebody for a year to help with cleaning up, doing some of the painting, and then as you go down, you'll see perhaps repairing some of the seating in Tower Gardens, helping getting some further additional displays, plant displays. So the sorts of things like the cascading flowers near the entrance, tubs near the entrance. And again, it's about having the resources to be able to water them and, you know, all of that sort of thing. So there is a list there of the things. I've included within that the swing for those who find using the normal swings more difficult. So whether that be, you know, it could be people with disabilities, etc., which again was something that council had previously identified. Also, some round the town thinking that actually when people arrive in town, they often don't know where things are. And they don't only arrive at the railway station, they also arrive at other places. And so I've suggested perhaps some information lecterns there, which could go at the train station, on the seafront, at the entrance to Tower Gardens, at the end of perhaps Lumley Avenue, and in the North Parade area as well. So those are some things that have put forward. I've today passed through some, well, yesterday and today, passed through some potential costs that those would be to East Lindsey. So, as I say, it's about trying to match in with the sorts of things that the funding is likely to provide, so that we can get some access to some of that funding to do some of these things. So there'll be further discussions over the next few weeks, and then hopefully we'll get to a positive decision. But I just wanted really to touch base tonight with you, because obviously you've delegated this to me, that those sorts of things are sort of in line with those ambitions that you had. I know many of them are things that have been mentioned at council previously.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton.
Can this town fund be used, welcome back fund, can it be used for the hanging baskets on Lumley Road as well?
Potentially we could use to help water. The idea is that we've put in for a resource at a certain level, so that would be similar to our grounds team level, and then we list out a whole load of objectives that they could get on and do that would help improve the environment, improve the, you know, how people were perceiving the town. Probably, you know, I focused it on Tower Gardens because that's a piece of land that we control and own and can have more say on. But there are other things in there that could be done around the towns. But definitely, yes, we could use that to help ensure that the flowers get watered, and you know that we're not as struggling, let's say.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have all the information. Sorry, Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, just thinking back to earlier on in the agenda, like Councillor Clax has just said, have we actually, I mean, we look at all the, obviously everything that's going to cost us money, like watering the plants. Can we not incorporate any of those into the Welcome Back Fund? Look at every option and more, really. I mean, is it a case of put as many options in as you can to try and get as much of it as you can, or are you restricted in what you can put in for? I'm just thinking, obviously, the more you put in for, the more you might get, or is there an amount you can put in for?
There is. I think it's in the hundreds of thousands across again the whole of the East Lindsey area. So there is a bit of competition with other areas for sums of money. I think we need to be careful not to overdo those things which the council should be doing anyway. Yes, I think you could get away with the flexibility of doing a bit of extra watering to make sure the plants look at their very best. But you know, that is part of a council service that we offer, and this is not intended to fund normal day-to-day council services. This is about, you know, perhaps, as I've said there, perhaps bringing forward some of the things that we intend to do but haven't yet funded or got the resources to do. So that entrance to Tower Gardens, could we do something to make that look better, be more inviting for people visiting? I mean, it is probably the area that we get the most complaints about, to be honest, certainly in the town area. You know, we could, some of the benches are getting in pretty poor condition now. We were going to do this, you know, a complete refurbishment within the town fund, but speaking to the East Lindsey officers, it might be something that we could get done now, and that would give us more flexibility within the town fund later on. You know, looking at the project there, how that's going to, you know, because we've done a very much finger in the air costing, and so we might have to cut things out of that to get it within budget. This would give us the opportunity of taking something out and doing it now. But again, none of these things are really what I would say funded ongoing council services as such. They're things that we've already got that we'd like to do. We haven't funded them yet. And this is an opportunity to get them done. So that's why I've put them in there.
Thank you. Can I just ask a quick question, Town Clerk? When you mentioned benches in the Tower Gardens, will we be going down the long life route? You know, the resin ones. Is that the sort of thing you're going to be looking at?
I think we just need to be careful that we're not treading on any of the historic, because it is a listed park. I'd need to look into that a little bit more. We have used composite resin and wood in other benches, and that's been quite successful, and they tend to be easier to maintain and longer lasting. Quality wood, I mean, the wood in there is quite old, and it's been there for some time, so wood can last, as well, if it's a decent quality, decent quality hardwood when you start off and it's properly treated before use. So I think, again, it's something we can make the decision when we if we get the money, and and when we have that conversation with those that have a say over the historic value of them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, fully agree with the benches and that, especially. Could we also look at the bins in Tower Gardens, because again, they're getting old now, getting a bit worse for wear. I know they've been there for probably 10 years. They need maintaining, they need replacing. So could we look at the bins to make that more welcoming, so you can actually see a decent bin, not a load of rust? And also the signs, I can't picture off the top of my head where they all are now, but the welcome to Skegness signs, there used to be one on the Ingermells Road, and there was one on the Wainfleet Road, the way to Skegness. Could we look to refurbish those and make sure they're cleaned, up to date, and refurbished in any way possible? And I do have one question for the Mayor on another bench, if he'd mind just giving us a quick answer to it, and that's the one on Lumley Road that we were looking at having replaced. Probably not the right time. If I can't ask the question, then just let me know. But have we got any further with that one, please?
Town Clerk, please.
Right. In terms of bins, we've actually had some offer of some bins from the Hildreds. These are quite large and very robust bins, and they're actually quite useful to replace some of our existing bins on King George V Walk, to add some capacity on Divine Walk and Beresford Field, where we need a bit of extra capacity, but also to add a bit of capacity into Tower Gardens, because, for example, last weekend, as they emptied the bins, the first bin they emptied was full by the time they got to the last bin, just to show how busy it was last weekend. So again, a bit of extra capacity there. We've provided some paint, and Hildreds have actually agreed to paint them for us. So they'll come over in a colour that matches the green benches that we have in other areas, so that we can use them anywhere. Going on to the bench in Lumley Road, I can't actually identify an area that is suitable. That is where we are with that at the moment. If you look down the road, because of the white markings that have been put down, where we've got a space for a bench, there is a bench. Where there's a gap, it's because either the shops are using that area, or there are other obstacles in the way. So we haven't actually, I've spoken to the mayor about it, and at this moment in time, we can't actually identify a space. I'm also acutely aware that part of the town fund programme for Lumley Road is to actually change the street furniture. So I think that all of the bins and seat positions could potentially change, and I have contacted East Lindsey to remind that the actual benches are ours, so that we need to have a conversation when they get to that level of planning. But again, we don't want to go through quite a long and lengthy process with highways to get benches in if they're going to be removed again in 6 to 12 months or however long it is time, because that would just be completely wasted effort. So it's a difficult one. I've lost track of what there was a third question, I think you had, Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah, it's just the welcome to Skegness signs, Mr. Clark. There's definitely one on Ingermells Road, isn't there? And I'm sure there's one on Wainfleet Road.
Yeah, it is something that we're aware of. These were originally presented by, I think it was the Civic Society, and they sort of gifted them to the town, and then the town council were left with the responsibility of maintaining them. We have been aware for some time that they're in a bit of poor condition. We were intending to have taken them in and refurbished them over the winter period, but because of resourcing issues, we haven't been able to. But yes, I mean, that is something I could add that to the list. I think that is something that would be perfectly valid in terms of creating that welcome.
Yeah, thank you for that. And while you're doing that, I mean, I don't know what the councillors think, but they're there, they're part of history, and like you say, they're ours. To make them stand out even more and more welcoming and give a different view, could we look at some sort of, as part of this fund, some sort of a solar powered lighting system just to wrap around the frame or something, just something else to keep the heritage, keep the signs, but just something else to just give that extra little bit of something?
I think it's a possible ability. Obviously, there's a potential to increase future maintenance costs, and this fund is a one-off, or looks to be a one-off fund at this moment in time. Might not be, but at this moment in time, it looks like it is. So we just need to be mindful that there could be additional ongoing costs for the council to maintain that. But it's certainly something, if the committee wants me to add that onto the list, then could definitely have a look at that.
Thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think there's a good list that you've got here, Steve, and I think if we can get any money to do these items on this list, then I think we should be grateful to have the money and get these jobs done. It's jobs that we would have to pay for or have our staff do. So any funding towards that helps the residents and the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis.
Totally agree with Councillor Brooks. Absolutely. The best we can get, is what we need. I've got to go now. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Speak again.
Councillor Dennis. Thank you. Councillor Tony Tyne.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, many years ago, these signs, "Welcome to Skegness," were actually sponsored by, the last time I saw them, they were sponsored by Natureland. I don't know what's happened to the sponsorship over the last couple of years, but I know that they are looking very filthy at the time. I was past one today and it was absolutely filthy. On the way Fleet Road, that one. Thank you.
Thank you.
The signs that we're talking about weren't sponsored by Natureland. I think there were other signs out that may have had Natureland alongside them, but we have the council have never received any sponsorship from Natureland in respect of those signs.
Thank you, Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got three little things I want to say. Regarding the signs, I think I brought that up last year, and I think it's a great idea if we can get them sorted and back to looking new again. Could we use any money for like a summer switch on event at all or anything like that? Also, I've just had a thought, could it be used for getting like a statue of Ray Clements in the Tower Gardens or something along them lines? Thank you.
I think the Ray Clements one might be difficult. I don't think that is relating particularly to the welcoming of visitors, and I think that's more about Skegness heritage and perhaps part of that sort of funding stream rather than welcome back. Summer switch on. I believe that probably East Lindsey themselves will put forward some suggestions. I don't know what those are, but those will be brought back for us to have a look at as well. Again, I think there are plans for the lights to be switched on. I don't know whether East Lindsey have any plans for an event related to that switch on, or whether it's a soft switch on, as has happened in the last couple of years.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, you'll have to forgive me, Mayor, but I've been in meetings non-stop since 10 this morning, so I'm going to give my apologies and good night.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Claxton. Good night, Councillor.
Good night, Steve.
All
right. Just propose that we move both of these on block, both the recommendations on block, and then we can move forward.
Thank you, Steve. I'm happy to second that. So all in favour, please shout. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I will be leaving now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Getting to item number 8.
Yes, I should be leaving as well, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, guys.
Thank you. Do we still have enough, Town Clerk?
We have 1, 2, 3. Everything's moving around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so we've got enough to continue.
Clark, I'm not a member of the planning committee. Am I needed?
It doesn't matter that you're not a member of the planning committee because we're meeting as the management committee. So I don't know whether anybody's got any. They didn't announce them earlier on, but any.
We've got
interest
6
in
councillors, haven't
any
we?
of the.
I will be leaving,
Oh,
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
I'll stay. It's fine.
Thank you. Can we take Councillor Cunnington off Town Clerk, please?
Is Councillor Sutton
Oh,
with
yeah.
us?
Mr. Mayor, I'll just quickly, I will probably have to declare an interest on item 8.9, the hot roast and farmhouse bakery running a similar business on the high street. But that's the only one I've got to declare an interest on.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay then.
May I? Are we core with Councillor Sutton?
Uh,
Kind of here.
I don't think we are actually.
We've got 8 councillors, including Councillor Sutton, so we are core.
Sorry, Councillor Sutton, I didn't see you.
Yeah, he's put his hand. He raised his hand there, Councillor. I saw him raise his hand and put it back down. So he's with us for voting. Okay, 8.1. Mr. R. Dickinson, planning permission and extension alterations of existing dwelling to provide an enlarged kitchen with an enlarged bedroom and bathroom over a breakfast dining area and a day room.
Is there any objections? Clerk?
I'm just, if you can just bear with me 2 seconds while I get the actual plans up, because I'm right. We'll go to 8.1. Right, there are no objections. In fact, there's support from the adjoining neighbour to this this particular building.
Do we know if it's in line with the neighbouring houses, or will it stand out as much?
Let me see if I can. I don't know whether you can see over this side. There's, can you see that?
Yeah.
Where the cursor is on the right hand side above where it says proposed extension. There is a layout there. And it shows that the extension is to the rear of the building.
Right, okay.
We can point out that it is a crescent, so you think that there would be more objections if there was. Councillor Dunkirk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, we are the committee that can offer objection, but to be perfectly honest, it is in keeping with neighbouring properties. It is of a similar elevation and similar construction material by the looks of the plans. So I'd like to propose that we support the application.
Okay,
I'll
thank you.
second that, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Claxton.
I was just going to say I'll second that.
Councillor Tony Chai.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's no problem with that. It's not overlooked. It's to the rear of the property, which is an open aspect. So there is a problem with it.
Okay, you can go to the vote then. Thank you. We've got those, Town Clerk.
I can't actually, well, 7 raised, yeah, 7 raised hands. I've got a pop up now. 7 raised hands.
Thank you. 8.2. Planning permission for an extension alterations to an existing house to provide an enlarged kitchen and bathroom with first floor dressing area and 2 number en suites to the side of an existing conservatory which is to be removed. That's at Rosebery Avenue.
So that's the location and that's the actual.
Are there any objections, Town Clerk?
There's no comments at all on this one.
Councillor Dunkirk.
Sorry, I have not got my hand raised.
Oh, sorry, you've got a tick on you. Councillor Claxton.
Yeah, it's more internal. It's not. I mean, it's not like sort of upwards or anything. I'd say propose that we move it.
Okay. Councillor Tony Chai.
Yeah, I second that.
Okay, all in favour, please show.
That's 8 hands. That's everybody.
Thank you. 8.3. 8.3. Planning permission for an extension alterations to an existing house to provide an enlarged kitchen and bathroom with first floor dressing area and 2 number en suites to the side of an existing conservatory which is to be removed. That's at Rosebery Avenue.
That's 8 hands. That's everybody.
Thank you. 8.3, planning permission, extension and alterations to an existing dwelling to provide 2 number of additional first floor bedrooms. Broad Road, Skegness.
So that's the existing plan. If you look at this area here, when I go to the proposed plan, you'll see that's it's that area there that's being
Any objections, Clerk?
There's no objections. There is a comment which is from a environmentalist asking that for the use of what they call swift bricks, which apparently provide opportunities for swifts to nest.
Is that something they have to do?
No, it's just somebody making a comment that they think from an environmental point of view and to help with the population of swifts in the country, that it would be beneficial if they were to use this. It's minimal. They say it's minimal cost. I would imagine it is minimal cost because it's only a few bricks. They're specially designed that allows the swift to attach their nest to it.
They're in just below the heaves of the property.
Again, it's a standard building extension. I propose that we move it again.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
All in favour, please raise your hands. That's carried. Thank you. 8.4. East Lindsey District Council planning permission to change the use of land to site 16 number of mobile homes and provision of parking, erection of a visitors centre, roof timber walkways and associated works. That's the putting green on Kiosk Foreshore South Parade. Councillor Dankirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just in relation to a slight point of order. I appreciate that Councillor Sutton may be experiencing technical difficulties from time to time, but we have no proof that it is actually Councillor Sutton that's voting for these, as we haven't seen or heard from him. Just wondered if we could just if possible, just to confirm that.
It's definitely a.
How do we or the public know that?
It's his phone. He's been sent this link through.
Can we ask Councillor? Can you switch his microphone and comment to confirm? We could ask this question for a few meetings.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sutton. That's definitely you.
Thank you.
So, all in favour then, please show.
Not been proposed yet.
Not been
Mr. Mayor.
proposed.
Sorry,
I've got a question as well.
Sorry.
Doubt there will be, but is there any objections?
Sounds a bit like a show this, but believe it or not, the way
there are a number of objections from different quarters. So the Environment Agency has objected on the basis that it doesn't meet the required exceptions, and that there are no proposals for proper flood mitigation that would meet their requirements. There's also objections from Natural England, Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. These are not necessarily objections that couldn't be overcome, but it's more to do with the fact that there isn't sufficient information in the surveys that have been carried out to demonstrate that there wouldn't be harm caused by this. So those are there. There's also an objection raised by Lincolnshire County Council because the proper procedure hasn't been put in place to deal with the public right of way that goes across there and is actually part of the coastal footpath. That they've put forward a possible solution for East Lindsey, but there is a process to go through for them to achieve that. And there are again objections from a neighbouring property, but on two bases. One is the eco impact on the area that borders onto the dunes and ultimately Gibraltar Point, but also concerns about the traffic in that area being generated and what limited parking there is, residential parking there is, being taken up by those who are holidaying.
Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Has this been before us before? This,
Yes, it has, Danny, yes.
What's the changes then, Councillor Ty, please?
Well, we sent it back because we didn't, the public footpath goes straight through, and we wanted to wait until we heard from Natural England about the footpath. And as Steve has just said, we don't appear to have had that put right yet. I know there was quite a few of the people that live across the road on South Parade that were against it. I'm surprised you haven't received more people against.
Thank you.
I think there have been some changes to the actual plans. I think they've been developed further from when we first saw them. So obviously East Lindsey hasn't yet made, planning has not yet made the final decision on it. But as I say, there are now a number of, if not objections, then concerns raised by some of the consultees that would need to be addressed, I think, before it could proceed. Well, unless East Lindsey decide to ignore those.
I mean, on this drawing, I can't see, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't see the entrance exit unless that's it right down in the bottom corner, bottom left corner.
There's, let me blow it up a bit more. I think that might help.
At the top there, look, Tony.
That's off
the
South
out.
Parade, yeah.
There's the out.
Yeah, yeah. It's directly onto South Parade.
Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, I think I can see where the objections are coming from, or people disagreeing with it. But for me, it's a catch-22. We've got a patch of land up there. I mean, it looks like they're retaining sort of greenery on it, grassland on it, bushes and trees on it. There's not a significant amount of, caravans or mobile homes, shall we say. I mean, when we looked at the original drawings, they were beautiful places, you know, very luxurious looking places. And now it's come back as mobile homes. It's a catch-22. Some people are going to say, I mean, we know how it got reacted on social media. Some people were saying it's been a dead end of the town. We're trying to expand the seafront, the foreshore, as far as we can, north and south, not just concentrate it on Grand Parade. So I can see that side of it. It's a real tricky one. I'd like to say, yeah, there's not a problem with it. They're doing something with it. But on the other side of it, there's going to be people out there that's going to be screaming and shouting, saying, why do we want another caravan park smack bang in front of the hotels? It's a mixed feelings with me. It really is. I wouldn't like to call it either way. I mean, I don't know. It's a tricky one.
Thank you, Councillor Dankirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is that the phrase mobile home has to be used because that's the thing that has to be stipulated. The understanding is that they're lodges, timber constructed lodges, as opposed to caravan sites. They still have to be classed as mobile homes, is my understanding. This is our opportunity as consultees to offer our own local opinions to the location and to this development. And there was an objection to do with the traffic. Well, I don't think that's actually a reason for an objection, in my opinion, in light of the fact that the car park entrance is now being diverted that direction. And if there are 16 lodges, then at an absolute maximum, we've got 20 cars, which are likely to be parked on site, as opposed to be using public street parking. So kind of that's my thoughts in mitigating that objection. Other material planning concerns for objection. You don't have a right to a view per se. It's the only concern is that of the Environment Agency, but we're not qualified to make judgment on that. That's their job. Although we're mindful of their consultation, I'm confident that the risk from flooding for 16 dwellings, not dwellings, sorry, 16 holiday accommodation is significantly low in comparison to the impact that of the residents in the area with basements and things like that. So I think it would be difficult for East Lindsey or any developer of that site to mitigate the flood risk without putting everything on stilts. Who knows? Maybe that is something that we'll see in the future. So that's kind of how I've broken down this. We know this land doesn't make profit for commercial benefit, for commercial reasons. Putting green and the pitch and put was great. I loved it, but it didn't make any money. That's a fact. And this is an alternative offering to the traditional tin can caravans. This is a completely different offering, and I can't imagine it's cheap to hire one of these type of lodges. I know there are lodges in like Woodall Spa and quite a few other areas that are incredibly popular as a kind of back to nature kind of approach to holiday accommodation. And I actually am minded to support it for the fact that we're going to engage with maybe new customers to the coast, perhaps, that are maybe looking for something a bit different. The traffic concerns, I don't actually think it's a concern at all, because there's a huge public car park quite close, and the traffic, we're talking an extra 20 cars, and a maximum of 20 cars, and if each car was to make 2 journeys a day, that is not a significant inconvenience in comparison to what has just been a rerouting of the entire car park entrance to this location. So just for the sheer fact that this is, significant investment into changing what is wasteland at the moment into something that can be beneficial to the offering of Skegness, I'd like to propose that we support it.
Thank you, Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got a couple of concerns with this myself. One of the concerns is traffic. They're taking half of the car park, so we're going to lose half of a car park, but that's neither here nor there. My other concern is we sent this back last time saying that we wanted to see where the public footpath was going to go, which is part of the coastal walk, and East Lindsey have completely ignored it. They're just running roughshod. Now, I've got no problem with this project, and I did support it in the first one. But when you send in a concern and they totally ignore it, then it is out of order. That's my concern. If they're going to ignore that and not reschedule that, what else are they going to ignore? You know, you've sent a legitimate concern, as have other people, and they've totally just, oh, sod them, chuck it in the, oh, they'll not bother with that. So that's my concern, being totally ignored. So I think I would propose that we send it back again and say, sort the footpath out, and then we'll support you. But don't just totally ignore us. It's our town.
Did you want to come back in, Dankirk, Councillor Dankirk?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Councillor Brooks for adding some additional insight into the original debate. As I'm not a member of the planning committee, I can't recall that originally going back. And it is kind of a reasonable objection from us as a local community and parish council. That is our duty to offer consultee to stuff that officers might not be aware of, or somebody sat in Manby might not be aware of. So that is a valid point. So what I'll do instead, if that's okay, is I'll retract my proposal. And if Councillor Brooks was to
what we could do, Councillor Kirk, is we support this as long as you show us how you're going to sort the footpath out.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Finlay?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm right or wrong here, but I'd like to be mindful of the time. We've been at it for 3 hours now. I'm getting tired, so I don't know how much longer we're going to be going on for. Thank you.
We all are, because we started meetings at about 10:30 this morning. So it's been proposed and it's been seconded that we reject this because we haven't had the answers to our...
Just strike that. It's not that we reject it. It's that we would support it on the...
Yes,
that was Councillor Brooks's, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely. That's correct, yeah. Support it as long as they tell us where they're going to put the footpath.
Yeah. Okay. All in favour then, please shout. That's carried. Thank you. (8.5) Planning permission extension and alterations to an existing dwelling to provide an enlarged sunroom, 294 Drummond Road, Skegness. Are there any objections, Town Clerk?
No.
No. Quite big land that these properties have,
Yeah.
and they're continually making alterations to them. I'd propose that we.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor. I know the area well. I know the houses.
They're big gardens. Councillor Dankirk, did you want to speak before we went to the vote?
No, thank you for the opportunity, however. But yeah, I was just echoing your exact comment.
Okay, thank you. All to the vote, please. Thank you. 8.6, consent to display 3 number internal illumination display screens at the Pier Complex Grand Parade Skegness. If I could just point out here, we're dealing with businesses do have these internal screens. It's in the Pier Complex, as you are aware. It's an arcade. Some of the AWPs, amusement with prizes, have bigger screens displaying images larger than they probably want to display. It's just to point out that they're all within inside them venues are big screens. So, Councillor Tony Ty?
Yes, I think we should pass this.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay?
Absolutely, 100%. It's new, it's fresh, it's upgrading it. It'll look fantastic, I'm sure, as long as it's appropriate what they're putting on it.
Thank you. Councillor Dankirk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I personally have quite grave concerns with regards to the current signage that is in the 2 locations in Skegness, mainly at night, especially when the lights are off. The luminosity of the signs is so dazzling for motorists. It can be quite dangerous. I think those that have driven around is a significant concern. I'd be interested to see what the highways input on that is. But my personal opinion, absolutely no problem. Really do love to see them, but they've got to be careful in how bright they are at certain times in the night, because you know, it takes a while for our eyes to adjust for those that do drive. And when you get blasted in the face by, of course, I've got no idea as to the specifications of these signs. It would be useful to note what that is. If they're really dazzling, it's fine during the day, but there needs to be an ability to tone it down, especially if it's a really dark night and motorists are still out and about. That's my observations.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton?
Yeah, just going back of supporting this. I don't see nothing about. I don't see them needing to dim down the lights as the seafront's lit up all night anyway.
Okay, thank you. I do understand where Councillor Dankirk's coming from. I think it has been raised on other issues as well. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I totally agree with Councillor Dan Kirk. If you're pulling out of, I've been pulling out, it's when the change, you've been pulling up to the junction and then all of a sudden it changes to a real brighter image. That's when it gets you. And I totally agree. Sometimes I thought, oh dear, that was quite bright. And it's because it had changed. You were used to the one that you're driving up to, but then all of a sudden it changes its image. So that would be a concern on that one facing, the one that's facing the Scarborough Avenue. Two on the side, you know, you're perhaps not going to be so shocked by them, but the one at the front could be, depending on, like we say, we don't know the spec, but depending on how, you know, what it's going to change to.
Yeah, this will affect people driving up Scarborough Avenue, the one on the front.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Councillor Dunkirk.
I really do want to support it, but until we got a little bit of assurance that they're not going to use white images at night, if it was a dark, like dark blue, greens, that's not a problem. But the really white light that they emit, I find it really disorientating. So on that basis, I do want to support it, and we do really want to promote this as a positive thing. But I would like some assurances that there's going to be an appropriate thought to motorists in the utilization of these signs at night. And if they could give us some sort of assurances that this would happen, I would happily support it. So I don't know which way to go, whether to support it on that basis or to object, but would support it if. So I think I need some help from the clerk, maybe, or the rest of you guys.
Clark? Did you want to speak, Councillor Ty? Sorry, did you have your hand up? Sorry.
Yes, yes, Mayor. Yeah, I completely concur with Dan. I think he's right in querying the one on the front. The one on the front. The sides are fine. We could live with those because you'll be driving down Grand Parade, coming to it, and it should be okay. But this one, when you're driving up to the main road, which is Grand Parade, that's going to be straight directly in front of you. And I do see a problem with that one.
It could obstruct your vision left or right when you're turning your head left, right, left. It could distract you. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Town Clerk, please.
It's quite a difficult one because you're supporting the principle of having lighting and think that would improve the sort of general look of the place, but obviously with concerns. I mean, in terms of a wording, I don't think it matters too much which way you do it, because it's conditional support, isn't it? You only support it if. So I think if it's worded in that way, so that you want to support it, but you have concerns, and therefore you would only support it if those concerns are addressed.
Correct, Steve. Correct.
See, I see it like this: you support somebody using a torch, but not when they shine it in your face.
Yes,
Count-
so
Now, I've got 4 hands up. Some of you are just talking, and we're not getting anywhere yet. Can you take your hand down if you're not wishing to speak again, please? Councillor Claxton.
The side one's not so much, but this front one that you say is going down Scarborough Avenue. The planning's for internal display screens. This one's external, what they're showing. Is that just me? Like, am I getting that wording wrong? Or is this screen going to be on the outside of the building? Because if that's the case, then you can't support it because this is an external screen, not an internally screen.
I can help, Councillor Claxton. The sign itself is internally illuminated. So it doesn't say internal display. It's an internally illuminated display screen, if that helps. So the point of it is it's not just a static non-backlit sign. This is something that is going to output light. So the light is emitting from the sign. So that's why they would call it an internally illuminated sign. When actually, sorry, not sign, display screen. If it was just like a non-backlit, like an LCD screen you'd find on your watch or your calculator, then it would just be a display screen. But because it contains a backlight, just like similar to the aquarium and similar to the cinema, is my understanding of what these are. And that's just a technical wording, I believe.
Thank you.
Okay, right, where do you want to go with this one then?
The clerk summarised my proposal perfectly. Would support it but we have concerns and would only support it if they addressed the potential light and hazards to drivers at night.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that?
yes, I second that.
Okay, all in favour, please shout. Thank you. 8.7, Manifest Homes, planning permission erection of fencing to a maximum height of 1.2 metres to the edge of number 50 to 54 Wickenby Way, works completed. Councillor Ty.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, my hand was still up from the last one.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton, Councillor Dankirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 1.2 metres is not particularly high. And every time there's an alteration to a boundary that's on a public highway, planning permission needs to be consented for. Even if you were to raise the fence by just 1 centimetre, in theory, you need to get consent for that if it's on a boundary or footpath of that nature. So I think this is pretty much just procedural. I don't see any problems with it. It's not going to impact the street scene in a negative way. So I'd propose that we support it.
Okay, do I have a seconder?
I'll second
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you. All in favour? Please put your hands. Thank you. 8.8, Harlem Caravan Limited, planning permission erection of a flagpole at the existing holiday park. Councillors Dankirk.
Thank you. Again, it's in keeping with the overall theme of welcoming people into our town. I have no reservations with the flagpole, depending on the flags, of course. But the pole itself is what we're here to debate. I have no concerns for it being infringing on the planning mitigations of other residents or anything like that. So I'd propose that we support it.
Yeah, well, I think most holiday camps nowadays have flagpoles.
You expect it.
Welcoming visitors, so I'm happy to second that. Councillor Burnham.
So I was just going to second it myself.
Okay. Councillor Tony Tyler, is it just?
Exactly the same.
Okay, go to the vote then, please. Thank you. I think we're going to lose Councillor Books now, 8.9.
Yep, I'm going to say good night because that's the last item on the agenda, so I may as well get off.
Okay.
Thank you all and good night.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, Hot Roast and Farmhouse Bakery, planning permission of a provisional canopy over existing pavement cafe. I do think this has been before us before, hasn't it, Councillor Ty?
No, it hasn't actually. This is the canopy above.
Oh, right.
The last one that came through was to extend the seating area
Right, okay.
and the glassed area. This is he wants to put a canopy on top of said seating area.
Okay. Councillor Claxton.
Yeah, I don't know whether Councillor Ty wasn't at the meeting. It may be, but I think this something very similar with the canopy has been previously.
I thought so.
And council, the committee objected to it because of the.
That was where the Christmas tree and it created too much of a bottleneck.
Exactly.
That's right. That's correct.
That's right.
That's correct.
That was for the canopy, yeah.
Was there any objections?
There's no further objections other than the council's last objection. It's difficult to see exactly what the changes are. I'll try and. It was this area here that was the council objected to before.
So they're trying to do what they've done with the cafe next door, outside their cafe, basically, yeah.
No, it's the same one.
It's the same
no,
one.
I mean extend the canopy. That's what I mean.
You're talking Sugar Sweet.
No. On the pedestrian part.
Yes. What you're talking about, Simon, is the Sugar Sweet extended theirs, and so he's put in to extend his as well.
Can I bring Councillor Dankirk in?
Thank you. The original debate was the whole purpose of this is essentially getting an extension at the cost of footpath and highway space at a minimal cost without having to physically build a structure. Is the way I look at it. That's one side of the debate and the argument. The other side is I've had a pretty tough deal with regards to the last year and COVID and lockdowns. That is not a material planning factor for that should influence our decisions. However, I personally think this is such a high footfall area. Putting barriers is one thing. Putting a canopy over the top of it pretty much makes it just an extension to the actual property. And I just think it goes against the ethos of the original intent. For example, if you didn't have a canopy, could be nothing that would stop somebody smoking outside because they're in an open air space. They may wish to sit outside, and I don't know what their rules are for that, but in theory, that could be compliant with the law. Putting a canopy on the top, all of a sudden, takes it into into an enclosed space, and that would also kind of increase the COVID risks as well. I just don't like it, and and that was why the council originally objected, because it's literally taking away footpath space. Chuck a Christmas tree and a Christmas market in the mix, and you literally have got a huge bottleneck. And all it needs is for a few people to stop and have a little conversation for 5 minutes, and you then start getting pedestrian road rage. It's just not. It's not Skegness, is it? Let's be honest. And I think highways should have a significant objection to this, and I'd like to know why they're not. But from my opinion, from our understanding as locals, we know it's a heavily footfalled area. I'd like to object on that basis.
Yeah. Okay. But usually the cafe culture usually sits out these places. You usually have an awning that winds out and winds back in. That's different than a building like Councillor Dankirk has put. Councillor Claxton.
No. If you're looking at the bit I was saying about the extension is, you see where it says pavement cafe.
Yes.
That's kind of where the Christmas tree goes, is that part, isn't it? So they're asking for this part here on the
on the pavement side, basically, where the adjacent to the Lumley Road. This is the Lumley Road, is that right?
Lumley Road is this is the high street. This is the bit that faces the Christmas tree, which will be around here.
Yeah.
And then Lumley Road is off screen.
Yeah.
They've already got this in place.
The screens they have.
And they've already got seating with a canopy that comes out.
Yes, but they want to put a no, there's an awning that comes out. They want to put a canopy, permanent fixture. Councillor Burnham?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to second Dan Kirk, actually. We had the same problem 6 months ago when this came to council. It will completely spoil the view. It's going to narrow the pathway, and like Councillor Kirk says, it's just going to be a bottleneck in the summer. I'd like to second this proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay?
Yeah, first it was tables, then extended tables, then it was put the screens, now it's the roof. Next it'll be the sides and some pictures on the walls. I think it's just slowly but surely becoming an extension beyond people's control. And then you've got the volume of water on the top. I think, like you say, it's closing it in. There's just so many negatives to it. It's a big open space. We're trying to rebuild the town centre with loads of plans to rebuild it, which is going to increase the footfall. I think this is just reducing that footfall to a bottleneck. So there's too many negatives for me.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kirk?
Just quickly, good point, Adrian, actually. The water is just going to be channeled to one location, and there was already a bit of a surface water in that area anyway. And if you are enclosing the top and somebody walking past is smoking, the air hasn't got anywhere to go if you put a roof on the top. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't want to be sat under there when people walking past and smoking, because the air's got nowhere to go. So that's another ground that perhaps we could explore, that pollution and, well, just air pollution, it would impact air pollution, enclosing that. I think that is a good ground, planning ground that we could go down, how it could potentially impact public health. But yeah, that's just to add. I think it's been proposed and seconded. So
been proposed and seconded. This has been rejected. So all in favour, please show. Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. Thank you. And sorry it took so long, but we've had a good debate. So I'll say goodbye. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.
No.
Good night.
Right.
Did you get the paint for that those bins, Steve?
I don't know whether it's been delivered, but definitely we've got somebody on it if it hasn't.
Super. Well done, mate.
Okay.
Cheers now. See you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, Kate.
Bye.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, what a meeting. Gosh.
I know. Late. Bye.